And Fantasy Alarm presents the 2023 NFL Draft BettorCast, covering the fantasy football and sports betting angles of the NFL Draft.
Are you ready? Let's get it started.
Rookie scouting reports, NFL player comparisons, instant projections, draft props, and live betting. Live reports from Fantasy Alarm's Britt Flynn in Kansas City with the first pick. Follow the NFL Draft and play our live Q&A contest for your chance to win fabulous prizes. This is the 2023 NFL Draft BettorCast on Fantasy Alarm and Bettor Sports Network.
Yes, welcome. It's the 2023 NFL Draft BettorCast. I'm Marc, Malusis, Corey Parson, Lisa Ann, Andrew Cooper. We've got a cast of thousands. We got you all through the night, throughout the entire first round of tonight's NFL Draft out in Kansas City. What's going on, everybody? You guys fired up for the draft?
No doubt about it. Moose feeling good. Obviously, this is one of the big days on the sports calendar and happy to celebrate it with the Bettor Sports Network family. Now, I think we already know what's going to happen at number one, and within the last hour, I think we got a good idea what's going on at number two, so we'll see how the rest of the board shakes out, but I'm definitely looking forward to a great event.
Lisa Ann, what are you looking forward to tonight?
You know, I'm looking forward to how we can look at this. It's going to affect our fantasy football impact for best ball and season-long redraft leagues. And I think a lot of the conversation today, the Lamar Jackson deal comes through just in time. So it's one less question mark in front of all of us for tonight.
Yeah, no doubt. Coop?
Brother, for me, this is Christmas, dude. I don't know what I'm about to get, but I'm excited to see what it is. That's all for me, man. I am fired up. Let's go.
Yeah, and Lisa Ann hit on the biggest story. And last year, there was a lot of drama around Aaron Rodgers, and we know now that Aaron Rodgers is a New York Jet, but the potential future of him in Green Bay, he ended up staying with the Green Bay Packers. But, you know, Lamar Jackson, interest, non-interest around the National Football League, well, he's back with the Baltimore Ravens, and rightfully so. A 5-year, $260 million contract, $185 million of that being guaranteed. And now the Baltimore Ravens have got their quarterback and a guy that has really, Coop, defined their organization ever since he's been a starter, a former unanimous MVP of the National Football League. It's good to see Lamar back in Baltimore because it would have been strange seeing him play someplace else.
Yeah, I was not interested in restarting the whole thing. I'm super excited for this Todd Monken air raid offense. Like he says, I want to throw. My background's quarterbacks, my background's wide receivers. We're going to see Mark Andrews probably lining up in the slot a ton, actually throwing the football. The last time this team was even in the top half of the league in pass attempts, you got 150 targets for Marquise Brown, 150 for Mark Andrews. Ball's going to be flying around with Todd Monken. I'm fired up for it.
Well, and then from a fantasy perspective, you look at the impact, not just on Lamar, not just with the new offensive coordinator down in Baltimore, which Coop just hit upon, but Corey now with Odell Beckham Jr. being a Baltimore Raven as well, you know, clearly going to a scenario he was looking to get paid. He got the $15 million guaranteed, can make upwards of $18 million with incentives, and a guy that Lamar wanted to play with down in Baltimore. We'll see what that duo looks like in that passing offense.
Yeah, I'm not that really excited about the addition of Odell Beckham. I kind of think he's seen his better days. To be quite honest, I think he's washed up. But I am pretty excited about the prospects for a healthy J.K. Dobbins moving forward. Also, you look at the fact that Mark Andrews has been his top target, you know, since he's been in the league. But listen, this is a guy 45-16 as a starter. It shouldn't have took this long, but you know what? They got the deal done. And like I think everybody wanted Lamar to end up in Baltimore. Now, we already know how top-heavy that AFC is. But listen, when Lamar is healthy and out there, they're just as good as any team in that conference. And the Baltimore Ravens continue to be a contender.
Yeah, they certainly will. And what is an unbelievable AFC, Lisa Ann, when you look at the quarterbacks. You throw Rodgers into the mix now. You've got Burrow. You've got Josh Allen. You got Patrick Mahomes. I mean, there's going to be a big-time quarterback next year in the AFC that does not make the playoffs with Lamar being back in Baltimore. But it just seems right. And the Ravens are a program and organization that even if they go through an injuries, a ton of them like they did a couple years ago, they still find a way always to remain competitive week in and week out.
Yeah, I'd like to place some money down with Corey Parsons right now on that Odell Beckham comment you just made, Corey. Parson, not Parsons. Sorry to abbreviate, but Odell washed. You know, I mean, he had a great season in limited time with the Los Angeles Rams and made it to the Super Bowl, coming into a team that he didn't play for before mid-season and produced. And so, you know, we get so in our head about not seeing somebody. Recency bias plays a big role in people forming an opinion about a player, but injury doesn't define a player their performance moving forward. I don't think Odell is washed. And I think as being a 2 or maybe even a 3 for Lamar, I think he's going to get us his good 5 to 7 touchdowns for the season, play the full season, and be back because he had the extended time to heal from that injury that took place 2 seasons ago already.
Lisa, you want a little side action? Under 4.5 touchdowns. Under 4.5 touchdown receptions.
I'll go over 5 touchdown receptions. Okay?
Loser gets a mohawk.
What's on the line? What's on the line? 5 touchdowns.
What do you think?
I don't got enough to do the mohawk.
I mean, how are we going to get Odell to come on the BettorCast with us if we're over here saying he's washed? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, Corey, man.
So you're marketing. She's marketing right now.
If I see it, I have to say it. And
I watch his workouts all the time. I
see
it. He looks great, and he looked great when he played for the Rams.
I'll tell you this:
there are a lot of guys that look really good at workouts, and you put them on the field, they're not necessarily the same.
But didn't Odell play well with the Rams for the last time?
He did, but I'd be concerned. Double ACL surgery on the same knee. He's always been banged up, and I think when he's been healthy, he's freakishly athletic. But where is he now after all of those injuries? That would be the concern with Odell, Coop.
Honestly, if there's some guys, if they want it bad enough, they fight through. Steve Smith. How many times did Steve Smith get injured, Corey? How many times?
And Steve Smith is also the last good wide receiver in Baltimore as well. So it's not like this is a franchise with a history of bringing in wide receivers and they immediately come in and have, fantasy production or production on the team. With Brashard Perriman, all of these stiffs that we've talked about with the Baltimore Ravens for years, they've never done anything since Steve Smith. I don't see where Odell makes that big of a difference.
Greg Roman's gone. The bad man can't hurt us anymore, Corey. He's gone.
Right, well, we'll see.
Let's bring in Dan Servidito, who's going to join us now, Fantasy Alarm college football and betting analyst. And make sure to join us on the Bettor Sports Network app for the complete experience of BettorCast. Play our live NFL draft question and answer game while you follow all the picks and chat with fans. Compete for a chance to win a 1-of-1 Anthony Richardson augmented reality trading card. Download the Bettor Sports Network app for free right now in the Apple app or Google Play stores. What's going on, Dan? What are you expecting tonight?
What's up, guys? Yeah, appreciate you bringing me on here. It's crazy line movement in the last hour. So I'm very interested to see where some of these picks go. Obviously, some of them we know now. I'm looking forward to where we're gonna have a couple trades. It happens every year, so I'm wondering to see if anybody moves up to take a Will Levis or an Anthony Richardson and takes that shot. So that's
the interesting thing. Yeah, Danny, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the interesting thing is the line movement. Number 1 overall, we know it's going to be Bryce Young going to the Carolina Panthers. With that second overall pick, you go back 4 hours. Will Anderson was all of a sudden a -300 favorite to go second overall. Now CJ Stroud is, last I checked, it was -250 to go second overall. And then there's some reports down in Houston that it's the owners that want CJ Stroud, not necessarily the talent evaluators, that the talent evaluators actually had Will Levis as the second best quarterback on their draft board behind Bryce Young. So, I mean, interesting phenomenon. Corey and I were talking about the other day on Moose and Keith was the fact that, well, if you are, new head coach, you necessarily have to go with a quarterback this year. Do you play for the quarterback next year? Go draft a defensive player second overall. What about with that second overall pick and the crazy kind of stories we've seen over the last 24, 36 hours?
Yeah, honestly, for the past month, I have been convinced that DeMeco Ryans being the head coach, they were going to go Will Anderson, both Alabama guys, and DeMeco Ryans just looking to maybe get a rock solid, franchise defensive guy for his building his future there. And maybe, I kind of convinced myself too that they were maybe looking to next year's draft to kill Williams, Drake May, kind of just maybe punting on the QB spot here. And they do have that number 12 pick. So, I mean, they could maybe try to move up or something with that pick if they really wanted to get a Richardson or Levis. This odds movement's been crazy. I mean, now we got CJ Stroud at -6,000 right before we went live here on FanDuel to beat in the number 2 pick. So yeah, it was Anderson, like you said earlier, but it's CJ Stroud for sure at number 2.
What I'm curious about is Anthony Richardson. Is he going to be the player that falls? Because it looks like we got spots for Stroud and Levis, but I'm not sure that we got a place for Anthony Richardson. I don't think Seattle's going to get involved. Is he going to drop out the top 10? But put it like this. When we leave off, the three of us, me, Moose, and Coop leave off at 10 o'clock, will Anthony Richardson still be on the board?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
I'm looking at number 11 at Tennessee. I think they're a team that could take a shot on him because they can have him sit for a year behind Tannehill. They have a quarterback there. I do think a team will take a chance on him. I mean, yeah, this is a prime candidate to fall for sure. But I do think that a team might even take a chance or trade up to get him. Yeah, but his odds, talking about odd movement and odds line movement, his odds to be like the number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5 pick, top 10 pick have decreased a bit over the last couple hours. So that's a name that's been sliding down a bit.
I've got a landing spot, Corey, for Anthony Richardson. And it's not just one. It's every one of these teams with a boring quarterback. If you have a Alex Smith style quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo or Jared Goff, take a shot.
Jimmy Garoppolo been to 2 NFC championships in the Super Bowl.
Alex Smith was a back-to-back Pro Bowler, and he won 14 games, 12 games in those games. I mean, if you go out and you have a safe guy, go out, take Anthony Richardson as the upside guy. Maybe you pull the next Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes, or the next Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts. Like, give yourself a shot at upside. Worst case scenario, you still have Jimmy G, right? Give yourself the chance, though. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, look, we got Wendy in the chat. We got people trickling in the chat. What's up, Wendy? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Let's make a big move here. You have 2 picks in the first round. Set yourself up. Give yourself a shot at having one of the best players at the most important position. Right?
Yeah, the comment says I would take Richardson over Dak. Well, I would.
Let's not get into the Dak Corey conversation. The Dallas Cowboys. Today's draft night. Yeah. Danny, hang in there. All right, we'll be chatting with you throughout the course of the evening. Let's welcome aboard right now. Garrett Price joins us from Dynasty Nerds and the Carolina Panthers. Garrett, welcome to the BettorCast. The Carolina Panthers are officially on the clock, and the expectation is obviously they're going to go with the Alabama quarterback in Bryce Young.
Yeah, I think that's the odds-on favorite there. I think that's been the worst kept secret over the past week. I know when the trade first happened, it looked like it was going to be CJ Stroud, but then over the past week or so, it's really been strongly in favor of Bryce Young. And he's a guy that did everything. I mean, we're talking about a guy that played at Alabama, set records at that school, won the Heisman Trophy. So everything on paper looks good for Young, with the exception of just the size. That's always been his biggest concern, his biggest question mark. But I think Carolina had moved up to get their guy, and I think it was probably always Young, but they wanted to make sure they did their due diligence, went through all of the guys, made sure they didn't miss anything, but then just got back to where they originally were with Young. Garrett, let me ask you straight out. Is Bryce Young, is he going to be Drew Brees or is he going to be Doug Flutie? Yeah, it's a great question. I don't see him as a guy that I'm overly concerned about. I know the size is a concern. It's tough to project anyone to be one of the, arguably top 5 greatest quarterbacks of all time and a guy like Drew Brees, but I do expect him to have a successful career. He's a good processor, very accurate winner. There's a lot going for him. I really do think he's going to be a very successful quarterback. This isn't going to be a bust pick.
Everyone, he's the safest of the quarterbacks. Let's be honest. I mean, you could look at CJ Stroud, you could look at Anthony Richardson, obviously Will Levis. You look at Young, and despite his size, and if he was 6'3", overwhelmingly, there wouldn't even have been a debate. So we can get into the size factor, but we've seen smaller quarterbacks be really successful. Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, Kyler Murray, go up and down the line. You don't necessarily have to be prototypical. You go back 20, 25 years ago, it'd be a non-starter conversation. Doug Flutie was playing in the Canadian Football League, right? So, now that's no longer the case because of the schemes and the ability to be able to move the quarterback. And flat out Alabama, what was impressive, Garrett, besides his accuracy, was the ability to handle the big moment. The moment never seemed too big for Bryce Young.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, you would see him put the team on his back. And this isn't a guy doing this in, the Mountain West Conference or something like that. He's doing it in the SEC. He's doing it up against some of, if not the best competition that college football has to offer. He did it week in, week out. And you saw the mental processing. And I think that's really what was able to help calm those nerves in those big moments is he's a quick processor. He sees things a couple steps ahead. He's playing chess while other guys are playing checkers. And I think that's what really allowed him to be this elite quarterback, a guy that we saw from the high school level, have the pedigree all the way up through. And you love to see that when you're taking somebody that, even as a high school guy, they were talking about as one of the best quarterbacks. He maintains that the entire time. And now we're looking at him as most likely the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, starting quarterback at modern day. So definitely the prototypical path that a number 1 draft pick would take. Let me ask you, Mooch mentioned the size. And when we was on the show with him the other day, I had mentioned this. I want to get your take on it. If Bryce Young was 6'3", I think the Chicago Bears don't trade the pick and pick Bryce Young.
That's an interesting thought. I mean, is there a chance of that? Sure. I think right now, though, what they have in Justin Fields is what we've seen out of a lot of these quarterbacks lately where, are there some warts? Sure. But the raw upside, the raw abilities, because remember, coming out, Justin Fields was known as a good athlete, but it was talked about how good he was passing the football, and they wish he would run the football more. Well, then he gets to the NFL, and he has no offensive line, no weapons, so he's just running for his life out there. But I think they like what they have, and I think that deal that they made was such a good deal for their team because the defense is atrocious. There's no weapons. Like, they need more assets.
Garrett, you talk to NFL scouts, you talk to general managers over the years, right? They use the term clean when talking about prospects. I'll throw it to you this way. Who do you think the cleanest prospect in this draft? Like regardless of position, regardless of need, who do you have no doubts about it is going to be an absolute stud in the NFL?
Well, he's a guy that, we're seeing on the screen here now. It's probably Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson was another guy that we saw all the way up through. He was the number 1 running back coming out of high school. He's got the prototypical size. He's got great speed. Heck, he might be able to play wide receiver in the NFL if he focused on that. Like, he has all of the tools that you want. He's got a good background. So you don't, guys like Jalen Carter, he's an elite prospect too, but you have a little bit of worries about the background and things like that. You don't have any of those worries with Bijan Robinson. He's the complete package. He's the complete guy. And we might see a running back go in the top 10, which isn't normal anymore in today's NFL.
I would tell you, this is how good Bijan Robinson is. This is a real test. I was down in Florida with my family, just kind of watching the combine at a bar on mute. And my mom goes, "Who's that? That guy's good." And I look up and it's Bijan just stepping over bags. And I'm like, "Do you know who that is?" And she's like, "Nah, dude." And I'm like, "That's the best. That's like the guy." Right? Like, my mom's eye test can identify this guy versus other people. That's how clear he is for me. Garrett, while we have you, before we let you go here, I want to ask, you're Dynasty nerds, right? You're probably deep in Devy, deep in Dynasty. For today, if you could sneak, and give me somebody realistic, obviously don't pick some deep sleeper, but if you could sneak one person into the first round and give them late first round draft capital for your Dynasty leagues, which we all know, getting drafted in the first round versus second round, the odds are enormous for Dynasty. If you could sneak somebody in, who would you like to see go at the very end of this draft for Dynasty purposes? Somebody that we think actually has a chance to, or somebody that just selfishly I want in there? Yeah, a mix. It's got to be realistic. You can't just pick somebody from somebody deep. Don't put like Puka Nacua here. Like, give me somebody that could actually go in the first. Okay. It's probably more likely that this is a round 2 to 3 guy, but I would love to see Jonathan Mingo go at the end of the first round. I like that. We're talking about a production versus traits type of situation here because he doesn't have incredible production, but we know Ole Miss has put out a lot of good receivers lately. Elijah Moore came out a couple years ago, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf. So a lot of good prospects have come out of there. And he's got a lot of the traits you like, but he's also got the size. In a class where we have a lot of smaller wide receivers, he's got that size, that physicality, the speed. So it would be a shock. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's going to happen, but I would love to see it. And obviously he would fly up draft boards.
Garrett, who's the guy you're staying away from most?
Ooh. That's a great question. For fantasy purposes, Zach Evans has gotten a lot of hype. I'm not a big Zach Evans guy. He transferred from TCU to Ole Miss, and there's just a lot of question marks with him. Never established himself as the guy. So for fantasy purposes, I'm not really in on Zach Evans.
All right, Garrett. We're going to get to the Carolina pick. I believe the pick is in. Goodell is announcing it as we speak, and
It's happening.
It's happening. It's going to be
It's
the Alabama
happening.
quarterback.
The
That's it.
draft.
The
It's
first
official.
pick of the NFL draft 2023. By the way,
Ooh.
Kansas City is a great host town, by the way. Yes, it is Bryce Young, the Alabama quarterback. Everyone was expecting it. Everyone was anticipating it. We've chatted about it for the last couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, was CJ Stroud was the favorite. Then it was Bryce Young. And to be honest with you, Carolina makes that trade with the Chicago Bears, Garrett, for a reason, to go get their quarterback. And you don't make that trade, then evaluate the quarterbacks. You make that trade because it was a guy you wanted, and it had to be Bryce Young.
Yeah, I think this was the obvious pick. A guy that handles pressure really well, maneuvers the pocket well, not necessarily a running quarterback, but enough mobility there that he's going to pick you up some yards on the ground, but he's going to be able to keep plays alive. And that's what you need on the teams where there's not a lot else there. He needs to be able to keep plays alive, keep his feet, but yet still be able to keep his eyes downfield. So I think this is a great selection for them. I like CJ Stroud too. I think that would have been a great selection, but with all of the things pointing to Young, with just where he played, his performance, his accolades, everything, I think it makes a lot of sense for the Carolina Panthers.
I think the Carolina Panthers are now the favorites, or should be. I would bet them to win the NFC South. I think they got the best quarterback in the division right now. I mean, I think this is the best prospect in the draft. Hopefully the Carolina Panthers, some of they thought so as well. I mean, you just look at what he's been able to put on tape this season, even in the 2 losses to LSU and Tennessee on the road. He drove them down, to win both games. The other team came back and hit a kick. He's the last quarterback to beat the University of Georgia. Did that in the SEC title game. And the Iron Bowl. He is earlier this season, the game against Texas, he was the only thing that was good for Alabama. Despite Alabama's 2 losses this year, this kid had a great season. He's a true leader, best quarterback in this draft. I think the Carolina Panthers hit a home run.
Garrett, hang in there. We'll get back to you here in a little bit. Let's welcome back aboard Lisa Ann, who joins us. And Lisa, your reaction to what everyone expected the Carolina Panthers to do and they go with the Alabama quarterback and Bryce Young.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I think we're going to get over the size that everybody talked about so much before this draft. Yes, he is Kyler Murray's size, but he definitely has those smarts. I mentioned
his heart is bigger.
My last night on my show, I mentioned the fact that, we remember that Kyler Murray had to have film written into his contract, where every coach you hear talk about Bryce Young just talks about just his football IQ is just off the charts. He's going to get to be, in the locker room with Andy Dalton, which I think could be incredibly helpful. Andy Dalton's going to teach him all the new habits that he needs to know as an NFL player, which are much different than the schedule that's lined up for him as a college player. So this is a great fit. We know Carolina's defense was good last year. Probably going to need to make some moves when it comes to adding a couple of pieces. Maybe another blocking running back would be great. But Hayden Hurst will be benefiting a lot from Bryce Young's arm.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, they trade the best weapon to go get up to the number 1 overall pick in DJ Moore, who's now a Chicago Bear Coop.
Yeah, I mean, from the moment that Adam Thielen, when he signed there, he said, I had a lot of teams that I could have picked from, but I'm picking the Carolina Panthers because I think they have a shot to win now. I think, and a lot of people were kind of shocked.
And
people
they paid him.
And they paid him. Yeah, they paid him too.
That helps.
A lot of teams, yeah. I think
and they gave me
3-year deal. Yeah. If a team gave him 4 years, that would have been the team exactly. For sure. Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, though, like for him to have those comments, like you have to know who the quarterback is. I think this pick was kind of made a long time ago when you're recruiting guys like Thielen and DJ Chark and Miles Sanders and convincing them to come there and sign on for multiple years. You have to have a plan, right? Like, it's very difficult to get guys on board.
They also
when
need
you
a
don't
new
have a plan.
face to the franchise. I mean, with McCaffrey now a San Francisco 49er, they went through the quarterback carousel a year ago. They needed somebody that was going to be able to, that they could build around, that could be the face of Carolina Panther football here moving forward, and that they believe that they could win with, not just sell tickets and sell jerseys. And there's no reason to believe that you can't win with Bryce Young. I mean, you had more concerns about Tua holding up physically coming out of Alabama because he always got hurt in college. You don't have those, and I understand that Young dealt with a shoulder issue, but you don't have the similar concerns, and his medicals weren't a mess like Tua's was coming out of Alabama. Bryce Young's a cleaner player, medically speaking, and he's a guy that I think he's got obviously a better arm than Tua coming out of college. Corey, what's your take on what Carolina has done, and what do you expect from the Houston Texans here
When
moving forward?
Drafting this high in the draft all these years, they've been actually to nail some key picks on defense. I like what they did in the offseason. It's a division that's weaker. They can win now. Adam Thielen, a veteran wide receiver, young quarterback, veteran wide receiver. It always tends to work. I would look for Adam Thielen to have I don't want to say bounce back, but a better fantasy year this year, because I think he's going to be comfortable being a top target out there. So you have to see what they're going to do. And now, Moose, with the Houston pick is so interesting because, with the split between the organization, I'm hearing the coach wanted to go with the big defenders, either Anderson or Wilson. But, the ownership and the fan base is like, well, we got to get a quarterback in here at some point. But I don't know. I don't know if I would go Stroud this early, but we're going to see what happens. I think Stroud is the pick. At least that's what the odds say, and I believe it's off the board now. But I don't know. Here's the thing: if they can pick Stroud and be back in the first round, picking another quarterback again next year.
Well, not a quarterback. They're not going to pick another quarterback next year in the first round. No, because you're drafting Stroud here second overall. I just don't love the pick. Like, I'm not telling you, Lisa Ann, I'd select. If I'm them, I would take Anthony Richardson, the guy with the highest upside, as compared to C.J. Stroud. But it looks like it's going to be Stroud, or you go a defensive player and select a quarterback next year in one of the cleaner defensive players in Will Anderson out of Alabama.
Cardinals went back-to-back. I had a hot take on this one. Honestly,
the Cardinals also fired their coach and brought in a guy in Kingsbury that had a familiarity with Kyler Murray. A little bit different.
It's a difference. It's a big difference. But
Josh Rosen stunk too.
Has to be mentioned. Has to be mentioned that it does happen. My take on this one is that now that we know it's CJ Stroud, I don't see why Jalen Carter wouldn't be in the mix when we mentioned Will Anderson and we mentioned Tyree Wilson. People keep telling me he's the best player in this draft. I keep hearing it left and right.
Texans organization, I don't know if they can take that risk right now.
They can't handle it. Yeah,
that's what I think it is with the Texans organization. I think obviously a dominant 3 technique like that would be the person that, there's very few of those that come in to the draft with that kind of talent. But, that background, probably something that the Texans may want to avoid at this point.
Right. Yeah, but we get into the conversation about, and Lisa Ann, about drafting need or the best player on the board, right? I mean, do you have CJ Stroud as the best player on the board, or are you just drafting a quarterback because you need a quarterback and you need somebody to build around? Because if you don't believe that CJ Stroud's that guy, you shouldn't be taking him second overall.
Yeah, but I think the fear factor is what they're really working with. I just don't think they have any confidence in Davis Mills. That's been their biggest problem. And I get it. Robert Woods, maybe his best football is behind him, but he did have good seasons before the injuries last year where he was sitting with quarterback swaps there. Noah Brown could turn out to be, a great weapon. I just think you're kind of rebuilding, but starting with the quarterback is a great, great, great start for me. And I think this was the move they needed to make. I get it. They could have gone with some defense, but they don't even need the defense if they're not making any points.
No, I get that. I just look at, if I'm going to go with a guy that I think has got a fair amount of upside, and I didn't love Stroud's game this entire year outside of the national semifinal they played against Georgia where he absolutely balled out. I thought he was really inconsistent during the course of the regular season, and I know the wide receivers were banged up for the Buckeyes during the year. The guy I would look at, would be Richardson out of Florida. If I'm looking for a guy that's going to be, as he describes himself, as a Martian, that I can give some time. I can start Davis Mills. I don't need to start him year one. I can give him time to sit, but I believe has got the most upside outside of Bryce Young. To me, it would have been Anthony Richardson out of Florida, not CJ Stroud.
And right now, for people that aren't in on it, make sure you downloaded the Bettor Sports app and that you're in on the BettorCast. We're asking questions right now because we're giving away an Anthony Richardson card today. Like, Anthony Richardson has the highest ceiling of anybody here, honestly. There, look at right on the screen, the technology. And speaking of technology, this card, it's a physical card that you actually get, not an NFT or something like that. It's an actual card. And when you scan the QR code, you can do it right now if you're on YouTube. Take out your phone and scan that QR code. When you go over the card, it comes to life. It says Anthony Richardson's got things shining, and it says 1 of 1 because this is a 1 of 1 card. Not only is it the only Anthony Richardson card that we're making here, but it's the only one of its kind because this is a brand new technology. You're getting it on the ground floor. If Anthony Richardson becomes a big thing and these cards they hit the way I think they're going to, then this could be a very valuable piece of memorabilia. So I'm excited about it. The only part I don't like is I'm stuck here with you guys. I can't win it myself.
No, you're stuck here with us.
that's how you
you're
feel. You know what
stuck
I'm
here
saying?
with a scoop. I mean, that's what you're doing.
Hey, Moose, I covered for you on your show this morning. All
I
right?
know you did.
I'm kidding. I love you guys.
You've been working morning, noon, and night. Lisa Ann, hang in there. We'll get back to you momentarily. Let's welcome aboard right now Dan Servadidio, who joined us a little bit earlier on. Fantasy Alarm college football and betting analyst. And Danny, your take on what you saw first two picks, obviously going according to form, young. You looked at CJ Stroud basically before we hit the airwaves tonight. We're minus 6,000 to go second overall. He goes second overall. Now the big question is the Cardinals are on the clock. Where are we from a betting market perspective on Arizona? And what do you think the Cardinals do here third overall?
Yeah, it's amazing how so much about left being these backs that would go possibly and then
I think we got an issue with man. We got to get him back aboard.
Yeah, it had some technicals right there, but
no, Coop, that was not.
I thought that was mine.
No, that wasn't. Don't worry about it, Coop. We let you know that was you, Coop. That you don't want to be here with us.
I'm sure you'd let me know now.
I think Dan was doing that because I mispronounced his last name when I went and brought him in before. Shame on me. No one gets Malusis, right? I completely butchered his last name when I welcomed him aboard for the first time. But
Moose, this is an organization with problems right now. Like people turning down the head coach job. They gave Kyler Murray that horrible contract. This is a massive rebuild right here. I would try to trade this pick, move down, and get some more picks in. But if they just sit here and and draft Will Anderson, something like that, it doesn't really make that big of a deal.
How many defensive players can you possibly draft as we welcome back aboard Garrett Bryce,
exactly.
Dynasty nerds?
Exactly.
I mean, you have Kyler Murray begging for them to draft an offensive lineman. They don't draft any offensive lineman, and they draft one defensive player or linebacker every single year in the opening round. Garrett, what do you think the Cardinals do here third overall?
Yeah, I got him penned down as Will Anderson before the day even started because I thought Stroud was going 2. He did, which, by the way, I know you guys weren't a huge fan of the pick. I loved the pick for that organization personally. Talking about the most accurate quarterback, the most prototypical quarterback, and something safe and solid that they can build around. So I agree. I think Anthony Richardson has a much higher ceiling, but I think you have the safety and you don't have to worry about this being a miss. And
you don't worry about the Ohio State quarterbacks and how they normally don't transfer well to the league.
Yeah, and that's true. They haven't done great, but Justin Fields is there right now. He's looking pretty solid overall. I know that the jury's still out overall, but I think he's looking pretty good there. Looks like the Cardinals traded the pick to the Texans.
The Cardinals have traded the pick to the Houston Texans.
The Texans back on the clock.
So
they use that. Must use that 12.
Here comes Will Anderson,
and they're going to select. Reportedly, we'll see what the official, but reportedly they're going to select Will Anderson.
The rumors were true.
Wow.
The rumors were true for once.
So the Houston Texans, I mean, now they get their quarterback and they get their edge rusher and defensive player in Will Anderson.
So took the 2 picks and basically combined them, that 12 to get back up there and draft again. So you go and get your defensive player too. That's a lot of moves right there. That's a lot of big time.
That is. I mean, you're talking about a franchise-changing night. I mean, that is unbelievable. The Texans are up to number 3. They get their quarterback in Stroud second overall, and we'll see what the pick is officially. But it's being reported that it's going to be Will Anderson out of Alabama. Garrett, what's your take? You're talking about Anderson with Arizona. What about what Will Anderson's going to be, and what's his comp in the National Football League, Garrett?
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge move, and I think it makes a lot of sense. You have a defensive-minded head coach. I mean, Ryans was a fantastic linebacker in the NFL for a long time. Then he was a defensive coordinator for the 49ers and learned a lot over his time. So obviously in rebuilds, you got to get your quarterback, but you also want to appease your new head coach. I mean, what a way to have your cake and eat it too. This is quite the maneuvering here.
So Garrett, I don't want to interrupt. Here's the deal. The Texans sent the 12th and 33rd picks and a 2024 first and third round pick to Arizona for 3rd and 105 this year.
Yeah, so Arizona needs picks.
First and second this year and first and 3rd next year to Arizona for the 3rd overall pick and 105 this year.
Wow. Yeah, that's huge. That's absolutely huge.
Wow.
That is, I mean, think about that, Coop. Think about what this night can mean. I mean, the Houston Texans have been bogged down with bad coaching hires, bogged down by Deshaun Watson. You know, they've got a new head coach, a former, former Alabama linebacker, former player for the Houston Texans coming over, a former 49er defensive coordinator taking over as head coach. What this night could mean for the Houston Texans here, getting Stroud and Will Anderson.
I think that they think this is going to turn things around pretty quickly.
Are we sure they're going to take Anderson? Because
They took him. Yeah.
They took those pickers in already.
Yes.
So I knew they were hot on Tyree Wilson for a while. Oh, this is interesting build that Houston is going through right now. So, yeah, no, they gave D'Amico Ryans the keys. And I guess, basically it sounds like they let the owner get his quarterback and then, I'll come back and I'll get my defensive player. So it worked out. But what I'm curious in is moving – like, so you get those two picks. Now, the guys who got a kind of if you bet Will Anderson to the Texans, it didn't happen at 2, it happened at 3, so you still get to catch that bet. So that's pretty cool.
Well, if you did, but usually you're just betting the pick,
well,
right?
you can bet the team. You can bet the player to the team as well.
Yeah, the teams, yeah.
Yeah, so if you think you lost out at number 2, you come back at number 3. That's a nice bailout right there. Yeah, I didn't get that lucky.
The gamblers and Texans fans are going full Yosemite Sam right now, guns blazing too, because they all hit on this one. Right? It's a big party.
Garrett, hang in there. Well, let's welcome aboard. I think his connection's a little bit better. Dan Servadidio, who joins us now. And Dan, what's your take on what we just witnessed from Houston? Mentioned it could be a franchise, should be a franchise-altering night, one way or the other. If it works, we're going to look back on this night with Stroud and Will Anderson as the start of something special with the Texans. What's your take on what Houston gave up in the trade with Arizona and what they did at 2 and 3?
Yeah. I think you're having trouble hearing you, brother.
Yeah, I don't think we got Dan.
I mean, my take on it is this. I kind of wonder, so if you're doing this, you think you can turn it around really quickly, and you honestly don't want to do as much of a bridge year. Like the Cardinals are clearly doing a bridge year. They're dead last in odds, like Super Bowl odds. Like you don't want the team you just traded with to have a really good pick next year. You want to start competing right away. It almost makes me, I know there was a character issue fit with Brandon Cooks, but makes you wish that maybe they didn't do that. Maybe that they were more ready to move forward now and try and turn it around immediately versus potentially sitting at this draft next year and saying, oh, there's our pick right there up at the top that the other team's making,
Here's what I love. I love the fact that, if you're going to be aggressive, you target players in the draft. This is what it's all about. It's not a matter of drafting guys that are going to fill out your roster. It's a matter of drafting guys that you think are going to be high impact players. And if you were very high on Stroud and you look at him as being a franchise quarterback, you don't care what he scored out in the, some dopey test in Indianapolis, and Will Anderson was a stud at Alabama. You go get guys on both sides of the football. Quarterback, most important position. Getting after the quarterback, that's the one thing you need to do. Protect yours, get after theirs. They got their quarterback they believe is going to be their star of the future, and they got a guy, Will Anderson, who was an absolute pass-rushing beast for Alabama.
Moose, I'm sensing you might not like the S2 cognitive test very much. Huh?
No, I don't.
I get a feeling that you might not.
I think we get carried away. Like, I also think it gets to a point, Coop, sometimes where it's like character assassination. I mean, so we're going into it and we're gonna grade guys out. You can look at guys that were brilliant on that test that stunk in the NFL. You could also, so it's kind of like a dealer's choice, what you want to prove and what you want to see. But I mean, I didn't love Stroud coming out of Ohio State. It had nothing to do with the testing. Had more to do with, I thought he was really inconsistent this year on tape for the Buckeyes. He was great in that Georgia game. That was it, though. That was it. I mean, he played as well in that Georgia game as anything. And you can make the case, well, Sam Darnold was a one-game wonder at USC, right? For that Rose Bowl performance against Penn State.
And here's the deal. So, I mean, we're all singing the Texans' praises now. My phone is blowing up. Oh, the Texans are going to be lit, this, that, and the third. And I'm like, let's calm down, because C.J. Stroud was the guy who 24 hours ago was dropping. There's a lot of talk about him. And then Will Anderson's a lot of talk about his motor. For much as him being a 3-year starter and it's great, he's not a can't-miss prospect. There's, both Anderson and Carter, there's questions about their motor. So can you imagine if these two picks back-to-back don't work out? That's a disaster.
Let's
Nightmare,
welcome
dude.
Lisa Ann back into the conversation. And now Lisa's sitting there 4th overall. We've had 2 quarterbacks go off the board in the top 3 picks. Houston then coming back, trading back into the top 3 and drafting Will Anderson out of Alabama. Now what do the Indianapolis Colts do 4th overall here? Got to go quarterback, right? They don't have one.
You don't believe in Gardner Minshew?
No,
That's a
I don't
shocker.
believe in Gardner.
Minshew magic.
Got a great mullet, though. I'll tell you that.
Just touch on the fact that the Houston Texans made big moves, and I think this is just a great look. Arizona still does not know what they're going to do with D-Hop. Now we look at Indy. You kind of got to go quarterback, and they gave you a gimme, right? You still have the opportunity to get a great quarterback at pick 4, because at this point, if Arizona would have taken a quarterback, which we knew they weren't because of Kyler Murray, but this opens up a lot for the Colts.
It's got to be Richardson.
It's got to be. It's got to be.
Will Levis is such an Irsay guy to me, though. He really feels like it.
Yeah, I don't love the Levis love. I really don't. I don't want to watch him at Kentucky. Yeah, I mean, I think it's Anthony Richardson. I think he definitely has the highest ceiling, and the pick is in. We'll get to it. The Colts are on the clock right now. They've got to get themselves a quarterback. And you're right about, I mean, there was been a lot of buzz around Will Levis as of late, but Anthony Richardson is arguably the best athlete in this draft.
Special. He's special. That's the word. That's the word I keep hearing. And I mean, when you have a combine like that, and like ridiculous, right? Like the best all time, pretty much at any position. So I hope he goes here, and I hope whoever wins the Anthony Richardson 1-of-1 card, I hope he's a mega star. So that card,
and it
is
is
better and better.
It is Anthony Richardson going for
the Indianapolis time, baby.
And
Can I just say that Anthony Richardson probably already spent a good $500,000 on his drip? Do you see the diamonds, Corey? You see this kid already.
That's unfortunate, Anthony Richardson. You better take care of that money. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, look,
and
Dado Josico just came out and admitted that he bought all fake jewelry when he was in the NFL to save money, and nobody ever knew it till now.
But Liz, don't you think a jeweler would set Anthony Richardson up and then he could just mention where he got it from? Don't they do that for the
They're not
Academy
allowed
Awards?
to mention any sponsors during the draft. So there are limits on what players can do. Designers can talk about that they're going to be dressing them, but they're not allowed to be giving out branding during this NFL event. NFL doesn't want any of their advertisers to be competing. So it runs into hey, you're not marketing anything here yet now. So it's possible he talks about it maybe on his social media, but there are really strict guidelines for this event for players to not be promoting and tying things in with the NFL.
Of course, business mogul Lisa Ann knows exactly.
There you go.
I had no idea. I just learned a little, so I had no idea about that. That's
so
great.
Here's the deal, right? So now Shane Steichen, the Eagles offensive coordinator, gets a quarterback that he can run a 6-back attack with on turf, and Jonathan Taylor's in that backfield too. So if he can scheme it right, like he did with Jalen Hurts, this can be a dynamic offense right out the gate, because we know what kind of player Taylor is. He's a guy who can go 1-1 in fantasy leagues. And now you put Richardson in that backfield with Steichen running that offense on that track. Yeah, this cool. This could happen. This could be a thing.
I forgot what we were talking. I'm just watching these highlights, man. I forgot what you were even talking about, dude. This guy's electric.
I'm talking about an Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor backfield.
Yeah, I mean the RPO, dude. Jonathan Taylor is going to run for like 7 yards a carry with the RPOs. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be ridiculous. That's how we get J.K. Dobbins running for the crazy yards per carry that he has, man. So this is going to be. Would this put Jonathan Taylor in the 1-1 conversation for you in fantasy drafts? My concern is this: when you look at Jalen Hurts and what happens with that offense, Jalen Hurts sets up his guys to be, look at even Gus Edwards has 5 yards carry for his entire career. Right, like he sets it up, but the problem is he takes it himself.
And
Jalen Hurts
second.
He had the second most carries inside the 5-yard line behind only Jamal Williams. Jalen Hurts did, and that team targeted the running back as a whole the least amount of any team, and that includes Kenneth Gainwell. So I do worry that these mobile quarterbacks can take that away, but at the same time, like it doesn't get any safer now in terms of him finishing. He's probably going to lead the league in rushing yards, right? Jonathan Taylor now with the setup. So it's just a matter of.
I just don't know. I mean, I don't know if he's starting week 1. Lisa, do you think Anthony Richardson's starting week 1 for the Indianapolis Colts?
Man, he very well could be. He very well could be. Yeah, I do think he will be starting week 1. I don't think there's a need to have him sitting, right? Do you? Do you think there's a reason to put Gardner
I just
Minshew
don't.
out there? Maybe
Well,
Gardner Minshew out there for
Well,
like 2 games?
Well, I don't know. I just think that if you're going to look and think of that he's going to be a little raw, and that was the criticism of Richardson coming out of Florida, is that he was inaccurate, a little raw, needs a little bit more time to develop. I kind of look back to the kind of the regret that the Jets had with Zach Wilson, where they start him from game one, and then their former offensive coordinator LaFleur coming out after the season say he might have been best served sitting behind a veteran quarterback early on, and that probably would have helped his development a little bit more. So it's I think it depends on it depends on the talent, depends on where they are in the development. But I don't think I would be against Anthony Richardson sitting behind a veteran quarterback, even though I don't think Gardner Minshew is the guy in Indianapolis. But I think just to kind of sit back, learn, get used to the speed of the National Football League before throwing him in there, because I do think sometimes you could really stunt the quarterback's growth if you throw him in there too early.
But I think when you're looking at, Michael Pittman Jr. is not going to benefit at all from Gardner
No.
Minshew. So you're going to have players that are
Always.
just not holding their value. I think Zach Wilson's situation was a little bit different. I couldn't justify Gardner Minshew because I want the gunslinger out there. We saw what Richardson did at his pro day. Threw the ball out of the stadium. Like, this kid's got an arm. He's got 3 months right now to fine tune it. He won't be distracted by anything else going on in his life, but for affecting his game so that he could start game 1.
I get what you're saying, Moose, though. It happens in baseball, especially. You put a guy out there, ruin his mentality, and now all of a
confidence
sudden,
is everything when it comes to
you crush him. Yeah. I mean, I know Anthony Richardson is not Malik Willis, but you look at Malik Willis, they threw him out there and it was a nightmare. And now, I mean, he's probably toast, so I could see it, but
I worry about Richardson's anticipation and his passing. I would worry about that. I'd worry about his poise, his ability in tight game situations to make a throw. I think the athleticism is there. I think it can be a work in progress. Now, can he beat Jalen Hurts in his second season?
Yeah.
I guess you have to find that out, but he's going to run that offense. Not have the same kind of talent, but do got that in the backfield. I don't know. We'll see. Listen, they had Matt Ryan. They had Phillip Rivers. They tried the old quarterbacks. It didn't work. So now, you know what? Let's see if we get a young quarterback and get it to work.
Lisa, we'll get back to you here momentarily. Let's welcome back aboard Garrett Price, who joins us now. Garrett, 5th overall, Seattle Seahawks. A lot of rumblings the last week that it's going to be what many believed going into this draft process was the best overall defensive player. It might be the best player. Where do the Seahawks go here, 5th overall?
Yeah, I do. I think it's Carter. I think that is the most logical choice. I think he is just an absolute man amongst boys on the inside there, wrecking defenses. Last year, the number 1 overall pick was from the Georgia defense, and arguably he wasn't even the best player on the Georgia defense. The best player was a guy that was still in school and is coming out now. I get the off the field issues and concerns, and the combine, he had to be escorted by police.
What
And
about
like
the
all
fact
of
he
that
showed up
was,
to the combine 15 pounds overweight? I mean, he was out of shape at his own pro day. I mean, like, you look at some of these things. There's no doubt on tape Carter's unbelievable, but you thought it was going to be this great buzz and build up, and it was almost one detractor after another kind of poking holes at what Jalen Carter is as an NFL prospect.
Yeah, and it's tough, but we've seen this before where guys, drop. I mean, we look at Laramie Tunsil. I mean, he had the gas mask like minutes before the draft started, and he only fell to pick 12, 13. Like, he didn't
Just
fall
an
very
iconic
far in
photo. The gas mask.
Wow.
Just an iconic photo.
That was just a wild draft night. Hey, Garrett, this is the thing. So 3 technique, like Michael Bennett, which was very successful in Seattle. But since the new year started, terrible against Ohio State. Was nowhere to be found in the Ohio State game. Then you got the off the field stuff. Then you got the pro day overweight, and then you got the combine overweight. He hasn't had no good news until draft night. So tremendous talent, but that can't miss prospect. It's signs here. I feel like he got some Jadeveon Clowney in him.
no,
Yeah,
don't say that.
That's it.
Don't you ever say that?
That's what you have to weigh as an organization. And I think there's going to be a lot of emphasis put on what team does he go to, because you need to have an established coach that's able to work with this guy, some established leaders that are able to work with this guy and help get him on the right path and make sure he stays on the right path. Because if he goes to a team where he doesn't have veterans there that he respects, he doesn't have a head coach that he respects, it's not a team that demands his accountability, it could be some bad news. But if it's a team that does, I think this could end up being a steal.
The pick is in. Look at this. No, they do not go Jalen Carter. Look at this. They take a corner out of Illinois in Devin Witherspoon. What's your take on Devin Witherspoon, the cornerback out of Illinois, going now 5th overall to the Seattle Seahawks?
Yeah, this is a bit of a surprise because I really thought that it was going to end up being Carter there. But it's with Witherspoon, you have something pretty rare in a corner where he is a physical presence. And you don't normally get that out of defensive backs unless they're, playing at the safety position, but he is a physical presence as a corner, really good ball skills, can cover anyone. I thought he was a lock to go top 10. I didn't know he would go top 5, but I thought he would go top 10. I get it. Look, the heydays of the Seattle Seahawks was with the Legion of Boom. That's a good fit if you want to, have the second coming of the Legion of Boom, a guy that's a physical presence, the secondary like this. I like the play.
But here's the question, Garrett, I have for you, because cornerbacks, I've heard when you look at this draft class, there's a number of them, right? What separates, is it that play, the physicality of Witherspoon that sets him apart at the corner position?
Yeah, I think that is one of the biggest things, because you have some guys that are maybe slightly better athletes than Witherspoon is, and it's not that he's this bad athlete by any stretch of the imagination, but you have a couple guys that are really, really good athletes. But I think he's also very, very instinctive. He seemed to always be there in the right spot at the right time, broke up a lot of passes, is able to just really cover receivers, mess with receivers, hand fight, do some of these things that can't easily be taught. So I think he's a talented player. I think he's going to be great in this scheme. I think Pete Carroll's going to get the best out of him.
Let's welcome back aboard, and Garrett, we'll get back to you here a little bit. Dan Servadidio, who joins us now. We've had some technical glitches. New spot, Dan. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
We got you.
Yes. Sound better than when you originally did. You sound like fantastic.
Like the Verizon commercial. Can you hear me now? Dan, what's your take on what we've seen here through the first 5 picks, with Witherspoon, the talented corner out of Illinois, going 5th overall to Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks?
Yeah, this is wild, honestly. If you've been tracking the odds movement like I have for like the past couple hours, especially today, just leading up to 8 p.m. Eastern, Jalen Carter moved to minus 700 to be that pick at 5, and rightfully you guys were talking about it. And then it ended up being Witherspoon. And same thing with like Levis being minus 1,500 to be the number 4 pick. So some interesting stuff here with Richardson going there. If you got that at plus odds earlier today, I mean, you hit big. And by the way, before we move on to this 6th pick, I just wanted to mention this because I was going to say it earlier before I got disconnected. Earlier today, you could have bet on like exactas, like if you bet on the exact 1, 2, 3 pick. And it's interesting the way the Texans made that deal with they took Stroud and then Anderson. And if it was the other way around, that was the favorite trifecta to go for the 1, 2, 3. Young, Anderson, Stroud would have been plus 165. And the way it ended up, it was plus 750 for Young, Stroud, Anderson. So nice. That was like interesting, like because they easily could have just taken Anderson and then Stroud. But so if you nailed that earlier today, that's clutch.
So now Dan Will Levis is the guy that's dropping.
And Carter.
Dropping. And
the Lions would have to be foolish not to run to the podium to pick Carter, right? With their issues on defense.
Yeah, I think it's good the pick's going to be Carter. Earlier today he was plus 600 to be the pick here at number 6. He wasn't the favorite. It was Witherspoon at minus 200. But I mean, yeah, their team, I mean, maybe they look at quarterback. I doubt they go Levis here, but Levis is the guy. I mean, I kind of thought maybe him or Richardson would slip out of the top 10, but it looks like people aren't as sold on Levis here. So, yeah, real interesting. By the way, if you go over to the BettorCast app right now and we were talking about that one-of-one Richardson card that you can get. You
Yeah.
got questions that you can answer right now. So right now, the pick for the question for the Lions pick here, if you pick an offensive player, it's 15 points. Pick a defensive player, 10 points.
Yeah, it's not going to be the Lions.
They're making a trade here.
The Cardinals.
Well, trade the pick could have been 25 points.
The
So how about that?
Cardinals the Cardinals have traded back into the top 6. So the
I
Cardinals.
wonder if this is an offensive lineman right here. Maybe Paris Johnson Jr. right here.
Trade was an option there for the BettorCast.
Trade was 25 points on the
somebody sniped that trade. Might have just got themselves a exclusive
the
card,
going.
dude. That's cool, man.
Corey, I like when you're thinking they need an offensive lineman. I like that idea of them drafting the Ohio State offensive tackle, Paris Johnson, 6th overall here. I'm curious to see what they gave up to go, because they made that traded out at the top 3, added picks next year, next year from the Houston Texans, now trade back in to the top 6. I wonder what they gave up, but I wonder who they targeted. Dan, who do you think the Arizona Cardinals here targeted 6th overall?
Yeah, I mean, it would be smart to get some protection for Kyler Murray. I know they do, they brought in Gannon, so it's a defensive guy. I think a lot of people thought they would go defense with that first pick. And by the way, the pre-draft odds here, I mentioned Carter and Witherspoon's odds, but Gonzalez, the corner, was plus 1,000. Anderson was plus 1,000. Tyree Wilson, who's slipping here, plus 1,400 if he's the pick. Paris Johnson, by the way, was.
What can you get him right now?
Right now, it's. I'm seeing it's closed.
It's closed. The pick is in.
Yeah, they probably know the pick, but he was before the draft. Right before 8:00 Eastern, he was more than plus 8,000. So it was like a long shot that he would be here at 6.
So the Lions traded back. The Lions traded out. Sorry to interrupt there, Koopa. Sure. 6th overall. Cardinals get the 6th overall pick from. They give up to Detroit the 12th. Overall pick in the 34th
so
overall.
Detroit's not in love with nothing right now. I would if Detroit slid back from here, I wouldn't be surprised if Detroit tried to move back again, because I couldn't see, unless somebody wants to come up and get Will Levis as Tennessee. It's interesting to see what Detroit has in plan right here, because you have Wilson and Carter that could have benefited the Lions. So
but if they go offensive line, somewhere Kyler Murray is going to be celebrating, because once he comes back from that torn ACL, they needed some offensive line help, because he's obviously not running as much, Coop, as he once did.
Yeah, and Jalen Carter could be interesting here too, because Jonathan Gannon, I mean, his defense ran through Javon Hargrave. I mean, they won that game versus the 49ers because Hargrave came as a interior pass rusher. So, I mean, Jalen Carter could be a big part of that right there.
Hargrave from South Carolina State.
Right, dude. And we got the pick in?
Yeah, I think we just got the little ringing of the bell. I think the pick is in. I think it's going to be Paris Johnson, the offensive tackle from Ohio State.
Yeah, I think Paris Johnson, he's if you want a guy that's ready to play tackle right now, that's your guy. Because he has, not only was he good on tape, but he has the requisite arm length. He's locked into being an outside guy. Peter Skoronski, everyone's saying that he might have to play guard. Like, he might be this year's Elijah Vera Tucker, where he's good and he's going to go somewhere on your line, but it might not be tackle. And then Broderick Jones, of course, he's got high upside, but you don't know. So Paris Johnson, if that is the pick, and it looks like it is, I love that for them. I think he's probably the most ready to play right now offensive tackle, pretty locked.
And that's what you go to Ohio State to draft, your offensive linemen, not the quarterbacks. But that's just me.
Well, there you go. Danny, what should we expect now? So we know that Johnson's off the board, Arizona back in. Sitting there at 7 is Vegas. What is Josh McDaniel? Where are we looking at here? Where the Raiders and betting options? And I mean, do they go Jalen Carter? Where exactly do the Las Vegas Raiders go?
Yeah, the 7th overall pick was a defensive heavy one in terms of the odds right before the draft, and maybe about 30 minutes ago before the live odds stopped and closed. But we had Gonzalez at plus 300, Wilson at plus 300 as the top guys. Witherspoon was there, but he's off the board. Carter right before we went live was plus 2,000. So he's a guy that's slipping here. And, just keep in mind the next few picks you could have had, if you wanted to bet on Jalen Carter slipping a bit, right here would have been plus 2,000. Number 8 pick would have been plus 1,500. and plus 600 for the 9 pick, and then at the 10 plus 1100. So, he's a guy, if he's moving down a little bit, you could have got him at huge odds, just an hour ago.
Well, Danny, hang in there. Let's welcome Lisa Ann back aboard. And Lisa, your take on what we've seen here recently, the Cardinals getting aggressive, moving back into the top 6 and getting themselves a big offensive lineman to help Kyler Murray, who's coming back off the ACL injury.
Yeah, I like that move. That was definitely a need that they needed to fit. And they calculated this perfectly. A lot of talk about Jalen Carter throughout the past couple of days. And it's interesting to see he's already starting to slip. I think maybe you guys thought he was going to go a little bit sooner, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but there's a lot circling around. It's not just what he showed up for pro day. There's a lot circling around him that I think is in doubt. And it's going to be interesting to see how much further he drops.
We got Tommy, Raiders fan, in the chat right now. He's calling for Carter. He wants him. So we at least got one fan in the house of the Raiders that wants Jalen Carter in the black. And
I don't know if Vegas is a good place for Jalen Carter.
I don't know.
I would at least say you took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah,
I don't know.
do not put that boy in
in
that situation.
There's a lot of athletes that I think it might not be a good place for me, Lisa Ann.
Yeah. I go once a month. It's not a great place for me, but I'm not driving and I'm not living there. Too many options that are open too late at night, and I think that would be a problem.
Last time I was with you, Lisa Ann, was in Vegas, and you were very well behaved, I felt.
Oh, yes. That was a work event.
That's right.
But I went out after I saw all you guys.
That's right, yeah.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think Vegas then does? If it's not Jalen Carter, who then, Corey?
If it's not Jalen Carter, then maybe it's the other cornerback. That could be a direction that they can go. I doubt they go offense here, so I don't think this is a spot for Bijan. But I would look at if they don't go Jalen Carter, the other cornerback, Gonzalez. That's out of
Oregon, Christian Gonzalez.
The Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon, I think, is an option right here as well. And then that the other offensive lineman that Garrett was talking about, Skronsky, he could be an interesting guy too. But the Raiders, or this could be a spot where the Raiders could look to trade down. But I think the Raiders need the help of Carter.
Coop.
Yeah, I like Skronsky, honestly, now that you say it, because if you're a team that just has a straight up terrible offensive line, why not just take – this is what the Jets did 2 years ago with Elijah Vera Tucker. Why not just take a guy that everyone knows is good? The question is, where are you going to put him, right? So if your guards are bad and your tackles are bad, you're going to find a home for this guy. In the best case scenario is you throw him at tackle, and then later you draft a tackle and slide him into guard, and now you have one of the better offensive lines. Right?
Last year, Coop, when the Cowboys drafted Tyler Smith, it was like, oh, where are they going to put him? Yeah. And then the season started. And you put him where Tyron Smith normally plays at. And he was fantastic. If you make offensive lineman rookie of the year candidates, he should have been one. But the Raiders got a lot of ways, a lot of places they can go. It's going to be interesting.
I want to remind everybody, Fantasy Alarm has all the fantasy football and betting content you need for the upcoming NFL season, featuring best ball draft strategies, rookie scouting reports, rankings, and projections, Discord chat, and more. For a limited time, get the complete NFL package plus DFS playbooks for all sports and an additional 20% off the already discounted annual price with promo code NFL Draft at fantasyalarm.com. That's promo code NFL Draft at fantasyalarm.com. I'm Marc Malusis, Corey Parson, Lisa Ann, and obviously we look at Andrew Cooper. We've got the card, the Anthony Richardson card that we're going to give away as well. The Las Vegas Raiders, they are on the clock. We'll come back, take a quick timeout, come back with the Raiders pick, recap the top 6 selections as well. You're watching the 2023 NFL Draft BettorCast right here on the Bettor Sports Network.
This is the 2023 NFL Draft BettorCast on Fantasy Alarm.
The 5-Pack with Kyle Elfrink, weekdays from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern on Bettor Sports Network.
Jalen Hurts, he's got a new contract. It is 5 years, $255 million. Now, if you follow anything in the NFL, you know the argument is always about guaranteed money. That's why Lamar Jackson's holding out. Lamar Jackson's winning like $230 million guaranteed. Jalen Hurts reportedly is getting $180 million guaranteed. Now that sets a new standard. Lamar Jackson says the standard is Deshaun Watson. The rest of the NFL says it's not. Now the standard is $180 million. So I just want Lamar Jackson to hear this. Jalen Hurts today was more than happy to take $180 million guaranteed. Jalen Hurts has probably not accomplished as much as Lamar Jackson, but in a manner of speaking, and this is just my opinion, Jalen Hurts started from a weaker spot than did Lamar Jackson when he came to the NFL. Both guys were seen as a bit of a project. Both guys were seen as more runner than thrower. To me, Lamar Jackson has improved slightly as a thrower, but is still mostly a runner. Jalen Hurts has improved an incredible amount as a thrower, and he's done it in a lot more of a quick time frame than Lamar Jackson. Jalen Hurts has arrived in the NFL as an unfinished product. It's not finished, but the polishing and the improvement has been off the charts. Much better than Lamar Jackson. And Jalen Hurts more than happy to take $180 million guaranteed. Lamar Jackson not. Lamar Jackson's still holding out. Now, those aren't the only two quarterbacks thinking about money today. Kudos to Jalen Hurts. Lamar Jackson's still pouting. Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. I will tell you this. At some point in the next month, I would suggest one, if not both those guys, Burrow and Herbert, will do even better than Jalen Hurts in terms of guaranteed money. Because that's what this is about. It's ego. That's what these guys love. He gets 180, Burrow will go 182, and Herbert will go 185. Meanwhile, Lamar Jackson will still be pouting and saying, why am I not getting 230? Maybe he comes to his senses after all this. Who knows? But Eagles get it taken care of. Jalen Hurts signed, sealed, and delivered. A lot of guaranteed money.
Make bets and follow your fantasy team while you buy, sell, and trade collectibles in real time. Only on Bettor Sports Network. Bettor Sports Network and Fantasy Alarm present the 2023 NFL Draft BettorCast.
Welcome back through 6 picks. Raiders pick is in. I'm Marc Malusis, Corey Parson, Andrew Cooper. Garrett Price is back with us as well. Checking up on a little late-breaking information is Price right there. We're back on camera, and we're good to go. And the Raiders pick is in, and it's Tyree Wilson, Garrett. Do you like the pick for Josh McDaniels and the Raiders?
Yeah, I think this is a great selection. This was a player that was rumored to be, potentially as high as number 2 overall. A lot of people thought maybe 3 as well to the Cardinals originally. He falls back here a little bit, but we're talking about a very long athletic player. And I think that's the exciting part here is he's got some things on the edge there, and that's what he's going to play. He's going to play the edge, and he's just got some things that you can't teach. And that's the exciting part for this Raiders team, because we're looking at a Raiders defense that was pretty bad last year. This was something that they needed to beef up. They're trying to get a new culture in there. They got Jimmy G in there. They're trying to bring in that New England style of culture, and I think he'll fit that well.
I think, and not only is this a great pick because of the player, the best edge rusher in this draft. Now you're competing against, Patrick Mahomes in that division. You're competing against what's the guy in Denver that can't play no more? Russell Wilson in that division. Justin Herbert. You know what I mean? So you got
Wilson might look a little bit better with Sean Payton, though.
That's true too. That is true. That's a nice suit. That is true. This guy's fly. It just came on my screen. But no, edge rusher in that division. Now you put him on that line with Max Crosby. Now we can start seeing the Raiders disrupt the game with their defensive line, and that'll really help that offense out in the long run. Raiders could bounce back this year.
Coop, you like Wilson the pick for the Raiders?
Yeah, I mean, so this is kind of a nail in the coffin for Jalen Carter here, because now that Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson, he's sliding big time. So maybe all this best player in the draft talk was a smokescreen of teams being like, hey, no, you pick this guy. We don't want this guy.
Well, I would think that. You look at Carter. There's no doubting his athletic and talent, his ability. There's no question. The question now is, the character concerns, because you're drafting a guy high in the draft. You want to make sure that he's available, that he's on the field. Garrett, clearly, and not saying that Tyree Wilson is not talented, but Jalen Carter was somebody we were talking about last year during the NFL draft about being available this year, and was widely thought going into the college football season being the best overall player in this year's draft class. And here we are through the first, 8 picks, 7 picks of the NFL draft. Jalen Carter's still sitting out there for everything off the field.
Crazy how that happens, man. I mean, hey, if you ask some of these guys, I'm sure Garrett Price will back this up. I'm sure you remember as a Devy guy that if you asked people a year or so ago, Spencer Rattler would be off the board right now, right? What happened there? So it changes. It can change pretty quick out here, man. It can change pretty quick. I'm just saying there was a period there where in those like the campus to Canton league drafts, I mean, he was going, like first, second overall. So it's crazy how that goes.
I used to tease my Giant friends fans and tell them they was going to draft Spencer Rattler.
If you can't play at Oklahoma and play quarterback, you can't play. I mean, that's
shout out to Shane Beamer though. Shane Beamer might fix him. Shane Beamer and Dow Loggins, they might fix him. We'll see what happens.
Garrett, hang in there. We'll get back to you. Dan Servadidio joins us back once again. Fantasy Alarm college football and betting analyst. All right, Dan, we're through 7 picks. Up 8 is the Atlanta Falcons. What's the betting board or what's the market looking right now for the Atlanta Falcons sitting there at 8?
Bijan. Yeah, looks like we get the pick in, but the favorite was Bijan Robinson at plus 175 right before this draft got underway, and about 30 minutes ago before the live odds went off, he was the favorite for sure. Shout out to our Fantasy Alarm friend Howard Bender. He mentioned a couple weeks ago the odds were dropping. It looked like Falcons were going to be the pick for Bijan. So if he was the guy, if you got up on that early, then you really got the odds there. By the way, if you bet $5, you can get $150 in bonus bets if you go to DraftKings and use fantasyalarm.com/DraftKings. So get on that if you're looking to bet these odds live. If Bijan is the pick, by the way, before we went up at 8 p.m. Eastern here, he was minus 115 to be a top 10 pick, which is interesting, plus 175 to be the exact pick at number 8, but minus 115 to be a top pick. And his team odds, if you wanted to match him with the Falcons, it was plus 210 right before earlier today. So,
all right, Dan, what do you think? When you look at it, you get ripped for drafting a running back high in the top 10 now in the NFL draft because the running back has not been marginalized, but you look at it getting value second, third, fourth round and having players of impact. Is Bijan Robinson that special to go 8th overall?
If you believe that he can be kind of like the next Zeke or Saquon Barkley, if you want to compare him to that, then you can make the argument that he is worth it. It's interesting with the Falcons, though, because they kind of got the job done with Tyler Algier, right? I mean,
I loved Algier last year.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if they needed to go and get Bijan, but he does have that upside to be like a game-changing, franchise-altering back. But Algier, they want a strong run game, right, in Atlanta. So
Algier owners in fantasy they have six inches from the edge, right?
No, they got to trade him because Bijan projects to be a 3-down type back if that is the pick. So they're gonna have to move him, or else your shares of Algier in your dynasty leagues, you might as well kind of go up in flames. But they need the corner.
Flush them down the toilet.
Yeah, they can use the corner. They can use Carter. Defense was a struggle for them last year. They bring Bijan in. Now we're talking Bijan and Cordero Patterson's on this team as well. Kyle Pitts has not lived up to expectations. Drake London, it's been so. Listen, they're putting together this offense, but they ain't got no quarterback.
Yeah, well, that's the other issue. They don't have a quarterback, and I don't think Desmond Ridder is going to be the answer. I loved Algier last year, and it is expected to be Bijan Robinson going 8th overall to the Atlanta Falcons. That is a guy that everyone loved coming into this draft process. We've talked about not taking running backs high in the draft. Some people thought because of that fact he might drop, but Bijan Robinson expected to be 8th overall here, Dan, going to the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, there's a reason those odds really shortened. Someone knew, obviously the Falcons knew that they wanted him at 8, and I don't think many teams were really inclined to obviously trade up to get Bijan, right? So that was an interesting move that they just were firm to pick him at 8. They didn't want to trade down. I feel like he would have been available in a few picks, right, if someone else wanted to move up, but they clearly just wanted to lock in Robinson here.
So, Coop, let me ask you this: if Bijan is the pick, right?
It is.
Okay, so Bijan's the pick. Derrick Henry or Bijan on draft day?
Bijan, man. Bijan. Just imagine this. Just imagine you're a a nickel corner or a safety, and you have Kyle Pitts out there, 6'6". On the other side, it's Drake London, 6'4". You got Keith Smith at fullback. You have Jonnu Smith at inline tight end. They brought back Lindstrom. They brought back McGarry. Like this team is ready to run.
But they don't have
ball.
a quarterback.
Really, any quarterback can dump it off to Bijan.
No, it's not. I mean, but here's the problem I have with the selection. I got to be honest with you. Like, and I like, I'm not ripping.
I think it's a bad pick, Moose. I love it for fantasy football.
Yeah,
fantasy
I get it.
I mean,
I already have a guy. Is Bijan Robinson that much better than Algier?
I think so. This guy, is
like, I'm talking about.
easy.
Okay, so if I have 17 games of Algier next year, is he a 1,400-yard running back?
Possibly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so he possibly is, right? He's possibly a 1,400-yard running back, and I'd probably have like 200-300 yards received. If I look at Bijan Robinson, he has 17 starts next year. What is he getting me? 1,600 yards? I have a running back on my roster right now that is a 1,400-yard running back that ran with power, that had breakaway ability, yet I'm going out there and I have the 8th overall pick. I've also already got a young running back. I'm drafting another running back with the 8th overall pick.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't have a quarterback.
They think they can win right now. And the difference is Tyler Algier did not grade out well in pass blocking. It's pretty clear that they'll probably still use Algier for certain roles, but Bijan is like the premier he's the best pass catching and the best running back in this draft. I mean, you're drafting a guy, you're thinking you're going to hang your hat on this guy for the next 7 years. So I get it. And I don't get it.
I'm glad you mentioned that. You said next 7 years. This is the key when you draft a running back this early, or really any offensive player. Or the 5 years from now, the Falcons going to be picking up his 5th-year option. Because running backs are only as good as their first contract.
I know. That's why I said 7. You're not going to trick me.
How good is a running back when you don't have a quarterback?
Moose. You figure that out later. You trade like Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford. They just fall right in your lap.
Yeah,
you trade the rest. You trade next year's draft for whoever is available.
Dan, hang in there. Let's welcome Garrett Price back aboard, who joins us. Hit him up on social media at Dynasty Price. What's your take on Bijan to the Falcons? And now we have the Eagles on the clock at 9. They have moved up.
Bijan, look at this. Now the Eagles get a steal in Jalen Carter.
Well, maybe they do. They could use a defensive lineman. That would not be all that surprising if you're Howie Roseman. But what's your take on Bijan Robinson here going 8th overall to Atlanta?
Yeah, every year for the past 4 years, I played college football, so I spend a lot of time in watching the tape. I love watching tape, specifically of the running back, wide receiver positions. And, I mean, over the past 4 drafts, he's far and away the most talented back. I was grading other guys out, some of the best backs, the Jonathan Taylors, J.K. Dobbins, Najee Harris. They were getting, in our scores, 67 or 76, 75s, 77s. He's getting in the 80s. So he's far and away the best back we've had out of the past 4 classes. We're talking about Ezekiel Elliott level. We're talking about Saquon Barkley level. I mean, he is that talented. Look, it might not be a good, true football decision. I don't know that I would make it, but he is bigger. Well, maybe not bigger, but faster, stronger, better athlete. Like, he is everything that Algier is, plus 5 times. Like, he's that much better of a player. He's got the pedigree. He's got the receiving upside. He just has everything that you want. We're talking about next year. I mean, in Dynasty, he's already number 1 running back off the board. Maybe not for a redraft, but in Dynasty, for sure. And you pair him up with Arthur Smith. You saw what he did with Derrick Henry for a long time. So I think this is a match made in heaven for fantasy football purposes.
2, number 1 Superflex as well.
Yeah. Where do you rank? Where would you rank Bijan, or where do you think he gets drafted next year? When I'm just looking at just the overall running back class in the NFL.
Yeah, just in normal redraft, he's probably going 2 to 3. I think Christian McCaffrey will still be probably the first guy off the board. And then after that, it's going to be between guys like him and Jonathan Taylor as the next running back off the board.
Do you think he can be the second running back off the board in redrafts this year?
Yes.
Wow, that's aggressive.
I really do.
So over Saquon Barkley.
I think he could. I'm not saying I would, but I think he absolutely could.
Wow, that's interesting.
I'll tell you what. right next week, we're starting these up at Fantasy Alarm. We're starting up best ball drafts. Use promo code. If you're not set up for Underdog, use promo code Fantasy Alarm over there now to get set up in advance. And what we're doing is we're doing one with just the experts, just the people that work with us. And then we're opening them up. And Howard Bender, Jim Bowden said he's going to jump in one, the GM, and we're going to start doing them with Fantasy Alarm members from the Discord. And we'll find out where he's going to go because these
ADP.
These best,
got
yeah,
four right now.
Howard Bender
Underdog's
sitting
best
back
ball, he's
cashing
four.
futures tickets. Did you see the one he had on Bijan Robinson?
Three plus 3,000. Yeah,
plus 3,000. He put $40 on it. He must pat himself on the back. I mean, he just
he knows somebody. He must know somebody. Little birdies. I think.
On top of this, I forgot to mention the Atlanta Falcons. PFF ranked their offensive line as the 5th best offensive line in football last year. You give it that talented of running back that good of an offensive line. And you guys mentioned the crappy quarterback. In some ways, that helps them. That's just hand off the ball more.
Yeah. So the Eagles have traded a 4th-round pick to the Chicago Bears to move from 10 to 9. And you know what? And the pick is in. You know they love defensive linemen, and we've been talking about him for a while.
Unbelievable.
And the guy that we've been talking about for a while is about to go, and that is Jalen Carter from Georgia.
Wow.
See, what I say,
ridiculous.
I said Jonathan Gannon should go get his own new Hargrave. Well, I guess the Eagles need a Hargrave too because they lost theirs. So there you go. There it is.
Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle out of Georgia, who was an absolute game wrecker for the Bulldogs on the field. Off the field, there are character concerns, Gary. When you look at Jalen Carter, we've been talking about him for a while here. What are the fans down in Philadelphia going to get now in a young Jalen Carter, who I would imagine has got a little chip on his shoulder? The fact that a guy that was expected to go in top 3, top 4, maybe even be number 1 overall at one point in time ends up going 9th overall to the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, he has to have a huge chip on his shoulder. And you know, from a football perspective, you like guys that have something to prove now, you know, especially if there were concerns about his work ethic, being in shape, things like that. This is a perfect scenario, and he gets to go to the Philadelphia Eagles, which is just another hand in glove fit. I feel like we've had quite a few of those in this draft with, you know, Anthony Richardson to the Colts, Bijan Robinson to the Falcons, and then here with Carter, it's just perfect schemes, perfect systems with the perfect player to go there. So I absolutely love this. This is a situation where the rich get richer. They just get a younger version of what they had. I liken him to a Jeffrey Simmons from the Tennessee Titans, who has just been a monster over the past couple seasons, several Pro Bowls. We could be looking at the next great defensive tackle in all of football, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least.
So they love getting after the quarterback, and that's what the Philadelphia Eagles just got another guy who their defensive line linebackers last year. I mean, they were historically great getting after the quarterback, and now they've added a guy in Carter who if he plays to his skill set and his talent, Corey, is going to be a stud in the National Football League.
Yeah, he's going to be a stud in the NFC East, and you got to see him twice. And if you're a Dallas Cowboy fan like myself, but like everybody said, this is just the rich getting richer, and you got a guy coming in here to a Super Bowl championship team. Not the championship team, excuse me. It's still talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's not get carried away. But you got a guy coming into the league right here on the NFC championship team, and he may be the best player in the draft. So that's kind of shows you the kind of mojo that the Philadelphia Eagles have right now.
I knew you were going to love that pick. I knew you were going to love that one, Corey.
Why would the Bears trade out? Why would the Bears, who need all the help they can get on defense, be sitting right there and pass on this guy?
Dude, they do this every year. This happens in the draft. I swear, this happened with the Chiefs. The Chiefs need a tackle, and the Ravens come out of nowhere a couple of years ago and trade them a tackle, Orlando Brown. I'm like, why are you helping them? Like this team just lost Hargrave, who one of the biggest pieces, and you let them trade up and get a new one. Let us live. Let my people live.
Thank you.
Garrett, hang in there. Let's welcome Lisa Ann back aboard. Lisa, your take on the Philadelphia Eagles being aggressive, going to get Jalen Carter, moving from 10 to 9, and Bijan Robinson going 8th overall to the Atlanta Falcons as they now have the dynamic Texas runner.
Yeah, I love the Bijan Robinson pick. And Corey had mentioned, are you going to take their 5-year option? I don't really think it matters to these teams anymore. They get to work this running back while he's still cheap and then let him go. That's really what we're seeing. So I think this is an ideal fit. Also, you think about, what he gets to play in, right? He gets to be in that indoor facility for his home games. I like that a lot. Jalen Carter is going to be interesting for the Eagles. the pieces they need are definitely on defense. We saw how far they went, getting all the way to the Super Bowl last season. I'm over here Googling and doing the research of how does Jalen Carter serve his probation and where will he now be sent to take his reckless driving classes that he has to take. He also has to do community service. So these are all things. He just pleaded no contest in March. It was the 16th of March of this year. He cannot be tried by that state for anything else, even though that court case is being reopened over the reckless driving. But remember, there were 2 lives lost here. So this is a serious burden for a team to take on. And now you've got to worry about probation and filing with each state when you're going to be flying him back or all around.
Yeah, and we'll see how the Philadelphia Eagles do that. They're looking at Jalen Carter and looking at him as the player on the field. You were commenting in the chat session about Tyree Wilson. I mean, and even Corey talking about the fact of his suit. Tyree Wilson might be the best dressed draftee tonight.
He picked up Roger, just picked him up
he was. You saw that, Lisa?
He picked him up like he's a little person. Yeah, he's a monster. Definitely a monster.
If he had suplexed Roger Goodell, the crowd would have gone insane.
WWE style, it would have been amazing.
That would have been the first time anyone would have clapped for Roger Goodell.
Now, what do you think the Chicago Bears do, guys? Corey, start with you here, 10th overall. They moved back from 9 to 10, added another 4th-round pick this year. They traded, obviously, out of the 1. The Carolina Panthers moved up. That happened months ago. But what do you think the Bears do here, 10th overall?
Interesting. I would look at names like Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I think is the best wide receiver in this draft. You want to get some speed. You got Zay Flowers, start to put some weapons around. And if you go on the defensive side of the board, you still got Joey Porter Jr., and you got Christian Gonzalez. So I would say that those are the top guys they're looking at right now in the Chicago Bear organization. They feel as if they got their quarterback. Now, we know we got a quarterback for fantasy in Fields. Do they have a quarterback in for what they're trying to do? Going to be interesting. But they moved back out off of Carter. Very interesting. So I would think they might go offense with this pick.
Yeah, I think they've got their quarterback, Coop. I mean, I love Fields. I mean, I understand. I think the offense is just going to get even better and a little bit more dynamic now that he's got a true number 1 receiver in DJ Moore.
So this is the trial. This is where we figure it out because people forget that even Josh Allen, his completion percentage as a rookie was 52%, which is that's not even the worst in the league. It's unacceptable. It wasn't even ranked within the top 32, right? And then next year he went up to 58, which was like 30th, right? So even Josh Allen took a little time. I'm willing to give Justin Fields a couple years, but what you need to do is take all the excuses away. So DJ Moore, perfect. Add him. They probably traded back because they didn't get Paris Johnson, another Iowa State guy. But now you give him a lineman and make if the line's good and the weapons are good, now there's no excuses left. That's what I want to see. And then we'll know for sure, right? So maybe 1-2 more years, but I think that, I believe, but Corey's right. They do not have a passer. They were dead last in passing last year, but they're dead last in passing since like the leather helmet era. Right?
Yeah, pick is in. Darnell Wright, the offensive tackle out of Tennessee, he's going to the Chicago Bears. So a guy that you'd heard some rumblings that the Jets were intrigued with Darnell Wright after they moved from 13 to 15 with the trade with Green Bay Packers to get Aaron Rodgers to New York, and they were looking for a starting right tackle, big offensive lineman, very, very physical at the point of attack if you watch his game film. And Corey, this is a guy that if you believe you've got your quarterback, and the Bears do, in Justin Fields, well, you got to go out there and protect him. Darnell Wright's going to be one of those guys that go out there and protect him. Offensive line for the Bears has been an issue for years. Yeah,
that is true. They do need some offensive linemen as well, and they got a good one with this pick right here, so they were able to slide back and get their guy. And now Fields is a slight guy. He's diminutive, as our boy as our boy at MSG would say. His name skips my mind right now.
Clyde.
So how Clyde would say he's diminutive. And obviously, you don't want him taking too much hits. We saw at times this year where he was getting beat up and having to take some plays off throughout the course of games. So you want to be able to protect your smaller quarterback. So I like it. I think it's a good pick, but I still think they got issues in Chicago.
Now you have the 11th overall pick, Lisa, and with the Tennessee Titans. Is this the spot where Will Levis? We're waiting. We've had 3 quarterbacks off the board now with Stroud, obviously Young, and Anthony Richardson. 3 of them going in the top 4. If you are the Tennessee Titans now, you sat back. Levis is a guy that some teams like, some teams didn't. Is this a spot you think Will Levis goes potentially to the Tennessee Titans?
I mean, I think it's a great fit because, again, he is a player that maybe you don't want to rush out there, right? So you've got Tannehill right there. You got Levis coming in. I think this is an easy pick. We haven't heard much news on Derrick Henry. We know he's been the workhorse back. There's not another back they're going to want to take. They do need some depth at receiver for sure. But I think that seems like where they're going to go.
Can we get the Mr. Scampers in the chat? Can we get that comment up there? The number one chat cat, Mr. Scampers, saying that he thinks Hendon Hooker is going to go before Will Levis. That's interesting. Everyone I talked to that went to the combine and was actually there, they said they loved Hendon Hooker. They loved everything the guy said. They loved everything that they saw, although limited from him. So I don't think that's a crazy take, Scamp. I don't think that's a crazy one.
How about this? What if Will Levis falls to the Patriots? What if he's on? What if he's?
See, I like Mac Jones.
I like Mac Jones too. Everybody
gave him two
me
defensive coordinators to handle the offense last year. What do you expect?
Can you imagine that? They gave him Matt Patricia as his coach last year,
and Joe Judge, who's like an idiot.
Exactly, and wonder why he failed. But they had Levis in for a visit. There's been rumors about them wanting to trade Mac Jones or shopping Mac Jones. If he's there, it'd be interesting to see if they do it.
I'll tell you this. I bought my mom a Mac Jones jersey a year or so ago, and this is good. It's going to start getting expensive. If they, I'm waiting 3 years before I buy a Will Levis jersey. We're rooting for Mac, dude. But again, hey, you know what? You got to in Bill we trust. So if he wants to do it, if Bill O'Brien thinks he's got the specific playbook that's going to work for this fella, then I'm in.
Lisa Ann, hang in there. Let's welcome back aboard Dan Servadidio, who joins us now. Dan, what do you think the Titans are going to go here 11th overall? Are they going quarterback? Or are they going to go another position?
Well, before we're live here, quarterback and offensive line, we're very much neck and neck for the odds-on favorites to be the pick here. O-line was plus 105, quarterback plus 100. I think they could go either direction here. I mean, O-line to kind of give Tannehill some more protection. I thought they could be a candidate to get Richardson if he was still available. Levis is a guy that I feel like it could probably start right away. And I think it'd be tough to have him sitting behind Tannehill because the first game or two that Tannehill struggles, you could have people calling for Levis right away. Whereas like if that happened with Richardson sitting behind him, you could maybe wait a bit, wait a full season. But So I think O-line is an option here for the Titans.
Yeah, I think O-line is a potential, and then you get to pick 12 with Detroit. When you're looking at where the board is falling right now and some betting options out there, Dan, for the public, what do you got?
Well, the live odds are off the board, but yeah, like O-line was an option, and like Peter Skoronski is a name that's been thrown out there as a possible pick here. You got Lucas Van Ness as another top O-line pick. Interesting, before we were live here, Skoronski was plus 100 to go in the top 10, and Van Ness was plus 270. So obviously they're both outside of the top 10 here. But Skoronski was a guy that thought, maybe the Bears would have picked them. And obviously they went in a different direction, but so he's a name to watch here. Van Ness too is another guy.
Pick is in. Skoronski is a guy, Coop, that you've mentioned on a couple of occasions. We've spoken about talking about offensive linemen first 90 minutes.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites, man, because I love these guys. Like if I'm a GM and I want to just make a pick for a player that I know is going to be part of my team, because like there's some guys like Broderick Jones, who's kind of the next guy on the board in my opinion. He's a very high risk, high reward. If he hits, I mean, people are saying he could be Trent Williams, but there's a possibility that he's not a starting caliber tackle, and you can't slide a guy like that into guard. This guy Skoronski, a team like this loses Taylor Lewan, who retires. This guy can play tackle for you right away, and if he's not working at tackle, you still start him at guard, right? So there's a few guys in the league like that. I like it. I mean, if the guy it's crazy to think this guy's arms were how much longer, Servo? Like another 2 inches longer. Now he's the top tackle off the board. It's crazy how that happens.
Corey, what's your take on what the Titans do here? Do you reach for a quarterback, or do you go and fill a need and looking at offensive linemen?
I would not reach for a quarterback. I would look to fill a need right here. I think offensive line is a need. I do think you still got those top two receivers on the board, but I think Tennessee has a bigger fish to fry than wide receiver. They took Burks last year, and after they got rid of AJ Brown, but I think it's a number of different ways you can go, but O-line is always safe. I agree with the guys.
Where do you guys think, Dan Cooper, ask it off to you, or wide receiver, open up the conversation? Haven't had one go off the board here as of yet. Is it going to be Zay Flowers, do you think, is the first wideout, regardless of team, that you think is the first wideout off the board?
I mean, I think it's going to be Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Okay.
He was minus 350 actually before we got live, is to be the top wide receiver off the board. Flowers was plus 350 if you wanted to go that route. And then Johnston, Addison were a little bit lower. I mean, I think Flowers is a clear second best wide receiver prospect, though, right behind Smith and Jigba. I think you can make the argument that within 5 years, Flowers could be having a better career at that point. I just think it really depends on landing spot. And he's a guy I really hope slides down to like the Chiefs at 31. If he falls that far, he could just be a stud right away.
Yeah, the window's open, right? The window now, the Titans are the first wide receiver needy team. Then after this, you get the Lions. But then, I mean, the Lions now with Jameson Williams suspended, maybe too. But then you got the Packers, the Patriots, the Jets. Like, now is the time where we're going to see somebody potentially go. I know that the Zay Flowers met with the Patriots on 4 different occasions.
I hope they don't ruin that kid.
The Shrine Bowl. They met him at the Shrine Bowl. They met with him at the Combine. They met with him at his pro day, and they had him come in for a full visit.
Another place, Cooper, wide receivers don't hit. Wide receivers don't hit in New England.
No, they don't. That's where wide receivers go to die.
I mean, Jacoby Myers. I mean, the list just goes on and on. Jacoby Myers, wide receiver 2 potential.
So it is Peter Skoronski that goes the Northwestern tackle and guard that goes to the Tennessee Titans 11th overall. David, hang in there. Let's welcome aboard back Garrett Price. What's your take on Skoronski, the tackle guard out of Northwestern, going to the Titans 11th overall?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting pick. Overall I like it. I'm never going to be upset with a team investing in their offensive line. It's never a poor decision to say, hey, we've got some needs up front. We want to get these big guys involved. So I think Skoronski is a really good pick. Look, there's a lot that's been made about like his arm length, his shortest arms, even shorter than Joe Thomas, which Joe Thomas ended up panning out just fine. So I think it's a very good pick, a guy that's going to be able to be a long-term anchor for them, whether it's at tackle or guard. I think he's strong enough. I know he doesn't have the arm length, but I think he's strong enough. I think he's a good enough athlete out there on the end to be able to play tackle for him long-term. But wherever they end up moving him, he's a versatile guy, and he's going to help that future quarterback, whether they end up trading back up and, looking for a guy like Hendon Hooker, whether it's Ryan Tannehill, who's their quarterback right now, or a guy in the draft next year. There's a lot of options for them in the future. I think this is just a rebuilding year, more or less, and they got a nice piece there in Skoronski.
All right. So let's look ahead here. 12th overall is the Detroit Lions. Where do you think the Lions go? Looking to go offensive side, defensive side. Where do you think Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions go?
I think it's the cornerback right here. Didn't they Aduka got rid of Aduka. They picked third, and they didn't even see him on Hard Knocks, like he wasn't on the team after they picked him. You still got Branch, the Alabama defensive back. You got Gonzalez, Joey Porter Jr. I think this is a spot right here where we see a secondary player.
Well, it looks like Gibbs is off the board.
What? No.
Jahmyr Gibbs. Wow. The Alabama running back.
No more DeAndre Swift. Can we never hear about DeAndre Swift again? Because Jahmyr Gibbs is better than DeAndre Swift.
What are they doing?
Jahmyr Gibbs is better than DeAndre Swift. That's it. I don't want to hear DeAndre Swift no more. It's over.
If you asked me to pick the spot that I thought was least likely for Jahmyr Gibbs, this might have been it. They just signed David Montgomery. They just signed him.
True too.
They did. Right,
they just signed David Montgomery. What are they doing?
We were chatting with, and Felix Sharp is going to be on in the second 2 hours from Campus Canton. He loves Jahmyr Gibbs. Like he thought Jahmyr Gibbs was actually he has him ranked better than Bijan Robinson as a draft prospect coming into this draft class.
Wow.
He loved Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama when you look at him as a pure playmaker. That is stunning, though. I don't think anybody had Jahmyr Gibbs going in the top 15 of this draft, no less the top 12.
So they can do what they did last year, right? Because, Jamal Williams he is not really didn't really have pass catching ability. Gibbs and Montgomery can catch. This is a disaster. This is a fantasy disaster.
It doesn't make sense.
This is a
What I'm wondering
disaster.
now-
It doesn't make any
because
sense, dude.
Gibbs is so talented, but you don't know what his role is going to be. It's not
Well, his role is the Swift role. The role that Swift currently plays is what Jahmyr Gibbs does best. I mean, we're talking about an elite pass catcher, talking about great speed. Like it's I mean, they drafted the same guy. So that tells me that there's a very good chance that they might end up just trading Swift. And that would make that really interesting because there's a lot of teams out there that Swift could be good on. I mean, I remember back 4 years ago, it was thought that when the first round pick was used by the Chiefs on a running back, it was going to be Swift. It ended up being Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but it was thought to be Swift at the time. So, I mean, there are teams that could use him, but this is this is far and away the biggest shock. And I think it's a bad pick, to be honest. Like, I think he's a good player, but I had him as a round 2 grade. So I am shocked that this happened. I don't think this is a good
All right,
move by this
fantasy
team.
wise, though, if you look at Jahmyr Gibbs next year in Detroit, we were talking about Bijan Robinson. What do you think Jahmyr Gibbs next year as a Lion looks like fantasy wise?
I would take Tony Pollard over Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that's
absolutely.
easy, right?
So
now-
Tony Pollard, I've been doing these best balls. He's going like 11-12, right? So
Okay, so
you're
that's
already
easy.
saying Jahmyr Gibbs is not a RB1. He's outside the RB1 group.
Although he had started moving up in best ball drafts, I gotta assume he's going to move down now with this crowded backfield and not sure what they're going to do. He's a talented player, but look, he's going to win fantasy games because of what he does in the receiving game. We'll see how many opportunities he gets here to catch passes, but it's surprising to me. I mean, right now you're having to look at a mid to probably even low RB2 for fantasy football next year, and I'm leaning more towards the low end of RB2.
I want to remind everybody, best ball fantasy football season starts immediately after the NFL draft on Fantasy Alarm and Bettor Sports Network. Get expert advice to draft winning teams, including strategies, rookie profiles, player rankings, average draft positions, data, and more. Get in the huddle and start drafting best ball teams on Underdog for a deposit match up to $100. Go to fantasyalarm.com/underdog and use promo code FANTASYALARM. So the stunner of the day, or the stunner of the night, I should say, is Jahmyr Gibbs, 12th overall running back out of Alabama. Now the question is, Garrett, what do you think the Green Bay Packers do with the 13th overall pick? Was the Jets pick, now the Packers pick after the Aaron Rodgers trade?
I mean, wouldn't it be a kick in the nuts for them to finally draft a
I
wide
was going to
receiver?
say
in
the
the
same
first
thing.
round?
I was going to say, I hope they do it.
Jackson,
Just be like
Smith,
good
and
riddance.
I mean, it just feels like the thing.
It'd be
that
like
they
an
would
old
do to
touche,
party again.
right?
Yeah, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, you pair him and Christian Watson together. I mean, that's a great combination because they complement each other so well. Smith and Jigba can play on the outside, but we saw him a lot out of the slot at Ohio State. We're talking about a guy with great releases, great route running. We would be talking about him as like one of the best prospects at the wide receiver position of all time if he wasn't slow. Like that's his issue, is he's just not fast. But he does everything else you want him to do. You pair him with a deep threat like Christian Watson, I mean, that's fantasy gold.
I mean, I'll tell you this.
Go ahead.
I'll say this. If they take a tight end here instead of a wide receiver, that tight end becomes the immediate tight end 1 in Dynasty and actually has a path to targets right away. Like you say, you take Jackson Smith and Jigba to play slot. What if they take Dalton Kincaid to play slot? Whatever player gets picked right here, if they do take a pass catcher, I'll be very interested in that player for.
Cool. I feel strongly that one of my builds this year will be a Packer stack if they take Smith and Jigba. Jordan Love,
Well, let me ask you this:
Dylan, because I think Jordan Love is the real deal.
All right, well, if Jordan Love's the real deal, I've got 2 talented running backs. I also have a stud receiver in Christian Watson. Am I really going to draft a receiver 13th overall when my defense couldn't stop anybody last year?
They got nobody. So outside of Watson, what do they have? We're talking Romeo Doubs, who is like is pretty ugly right now. But you're right, Moose.
I mean,
This is how they drafted for years, though. So
I get it, but they've also done a terrible job of drafting corners and safeties. I mean, don't they have to draft somebody to go get the quarterback?
Yeah, I feel like I just feel like it's a little easier to find difference-making playmakers on defense. I mean, Corey, look at your Cowboys with Parson. I mean, like he immediately, and he's a linebacker, so you can get those guys. I feel like, and as I say that, they do the exact opposite thing, and the pick's in, right?
So they go.
Yeah,
they go,
Lucas Van Ness, the defensive end out of Iowa.
That's a good pick too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
What's your take on Van Ness, the defensive end out of Iowa?
Yeah, this is a really interesting pick because this is another one where it's more looking at traits more than production. You know, Ness, he didn't do a lot during his time at Iowa, but when you project what he has, I mean, 6'5", he's got that long frame, and teams are dying to get pass rush, and that's what you're hoping that you get in Van Ness here. He's got the ability, he's got the traits to be a very good pass rusher. Can he get the bend? Can he get the speed rush? Can he get those things at the next level working like we are projecting him to? That's the biggest question. But he was somebody that was thought to maybe even be a potential top 10 pick. So this is a slight slide for him, but they're really banking on developing him and him really maturing over these next couple of years for this to be a worthwhile pick.
So this is more based on not what he did on film, more based on the fact of physicality, athleticism, and how it can maybe possibly translate into the National Football League. Right, Garrett?
That is correct. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, that's not exactly what I'm looking for if I'm a Packer fan, right?
They just. I'm
That's not exactly what I'm
ridiculous.
looking for.
Yeah, you know, this. I don't understand how they draft. I mean, I'm sure they get the player, try to develop him, but I don't know. It's a lot that can be going on. And then back to the Lions, right quick. Do they just plan to outscore people? Or are they trying to stop anybody? I think these two NFC North teams had interesting drafts.
Gary, we'll get back to you. Let's welcome Lisa Ann back aboard, who joins us now. Lisa, your take on what we've seen here, last couple picks here in the NFL draft, and especially Van Ness, the former Iowa Hawkeye defensive end, going to the Green Bay Packers.
I'm glad that the Packers did not troll Aaron Rodgers by finally taking a wide receiver. It may have been, though, smarter for them to take a tight end. But here we are, right? So what are they building? And the running back choice of Gibbs, like, is it that the Lions are potentially concerned that Jared Goff can't be consistent for the second year? Remember, Jared Goff had one really big year with the Rams and then had one really down year, planning his demise and possibly giving him more options to dump off the ball and not rely on his arm. He had a great season last year. None of us expected 29 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions out of Jared Goff. So this is an interesting pick, but I also think they could be making a trade, get rid of one of the running backs they have right now.
The Patriots are on the clock.
Smith?
The Patriots have now traded the 14th overall pick to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Do not know.
I could have told you that.
Always does. They trade back.
Another successful draft, folks.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, we
They love trading back. Yes,
everybody in suits, shaking hands. We traded it back.
Very good.
Who are the Steelers? But here's the question, Coop: who are the Steelers moving up to 14 to go get?
This is an interesting
maybe
one.
Porter Jr.
I have to say, as the Patriots were coming up to the clock, my mom texted me and she goes, "I still love my Mac Jones jersey." So she's reassuring me that it's going to be okay. And hey, you know what? We're safe, Mom. Joey Porter Jr., very interesting. I wanted the Patriots to take Joey Porter Jr. partially because I think he's a really good player, and partially because I want Bill Belichick to just go on a spite tour and draft all the sons of his enemies. I want to take Joey Porter Jr. this year. I want to take Marvin Harrison Jr. next year. If Bernard Pollard has a son, let's get him too. But
here's where I would say this: the Steelers the Jets are looking to take an offensive lineman 15th overall.
Yeah.
So there had to be an offensive lineman on the board that the Steelers felt that they needed to move ahead of the Jets.
Broderick Jones right here. Then Broderick Jones would be the name that I'm thinking about. If that were the case,
because the Jets are dying to pick an offensive lineman. They need to address the offensive line. So the best offensive lineman on the board is who? Broderick Jones.
Broderick Jones, the guy I have. Yeah. So I think maybe, Broderick Jones, because I don't think they would jump in front of the Jets. For the best guys I have left are the corner Christian Gonzalez. I'm surprised he's still there, but I don't think the Steelers would jump in front of the Jets to do that.
It's got to be an offensive lineman.
I think it is. Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be an offensive lineman. And the Steelers gave up a fourth. They gave up the 17th overall pick, a 2023 4th round pick to move up ahead of the Jets. everyone and their mother thinks the Jets are taking on offensive linemen. When they were at 13, now at 15. So Pittsburgh felt like there had to be somebody there that they wanted to go get. And the best offensive lineman on the board right now is Broderick Jones.
If they take Broderick Jones, this will be 2 years in a row, the Patriots trade away the pick, and the team that takes him picked the guy I wanted. Because last year the Patriots did that with the Chiefs, and they took the cornerback that I really wanted there, McDuffie. So if it happens again, it's just business as usual, really, for the Patriots to trade away the guy that I want.
I would watch right here for Nolan Smith as well.
Ooh.
Edge rusher. Yeah. I think he could be somebody.
I haven't heard one bad thing about Nolan Smith.
Yeah, I haven't heard one bad thing about Nolan Smith either. But it is the Georgia offensive tackle.
Oh, it is. So it is Broderick Jones.
It is Broderick Jones. Broderick Jones is going. Yes, he is going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. As the Steelers moved up, Ernie Acosta in our chat session saying the Jets got screwed. He's a huge Jets fan. Yeah, I mean, this is, the Jets were looking at maybe the Tennessee offensive lineman, the Georgia offensive lineman. You knew they wanted to draft somebody that could start right away because they're looking to win in 2023 now with Rodgers at quarterback. The Steelers felt like there was somebody that they needed to go and move a 4th-round pick to go in front of the Jets, and Broderick Jones is that guy. But Coop, you mentioned it. I think you mentioned he's got bust potential written all over. He could be really, really great, or he could really be bad.
They say this guy can get the floor is that he's bad. They say this guy can get out in front the way Trent Williams does and block multiple people, pull as a tackle, get out there. He can move around the formation. That's the upside for this guy, that he's got legs on him. Look at him go here. There it is right there. Look at he just took that guy completely out of play as a tackle. This is the guy I wanted, and that's why it's bourbon time here in New England.
Well, you wait till Michael Meyer go off the board. You're going to see more than that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's time, man. I'm clocking out at 10 o'clock. That's it for me, dude. Patriots are done in the draft today, right? Unbelievable, man. Classic.
That's it. Corey, what do you think the Jets now do with the 15th overall pick?
Yeah, no, you mentioned the Jets trying to go ahead and get that offensive lineman, and it's starting to get thin a little bit right now at that position. As you look down at some of the guys, boy, I tell you what, it's going to be tough. I think, I still think the Jets can use an edge rusher, that they can use some help there, make that defense a little bit stronger. So Brian Branch is another player as well I think the Jets could be in on. So I don't see where it's at on offense right now. Or maybe Joe Tippmann, the Wisconsin prospect. But
I'll give you Lisa. Where do you think Lisa Ann? Where do you think the Jets are going to go here, 15th overall? I read some reports as of late that I think they want to draft an offensive lineman. They do like Jackson Smith and Jigba, the wide receiver out of Ohio State.
I think after how hard they worked and how long New York waited, they got to protect Aaron Rodgers. That's really the key. He moved the pieces there that he wanted. You saw him out throwing catches with Lazard already. They got to protect him. That's the most important thing the Jets could do right now.
Yeah, they got to go get themselves an offensive lineman. We'll see exactly who that ends up being. Lisa Ann, hang in there. We'll bring you right back aboard. Let's welcome back aboard Dan Servadidio, who joins us now. Jets here, 15th overall. Their offensive lineman, maybe they were targeting Broderick Jones, who was left on the board. Steelers jump in front of them at 14. What about where the Jets go here, 15th overall, Danny?
Yeah, if you're on the BettorCast and the Bettor Sports Network app right now, you can answer that question. Pick an offensive player for 10 points, pick a defensive player for 15 points, or trade the pick for 25 points. And about 30 minutes ago, the live odds for this pick had O-line as the heavy favorite at minus 300. So you had to pay a pretty penny for that. But, if you thought it was receiver, plus 900, if you want to take a chance on that, D-line was plus 300 as well. So some interesting odds there. But yeah, the O-line, it looks like it's the favorite here to get some protection for Rodgers, like you guys were saying.
Yeah, the question is, who do you go? I mean, where do you go?
There's only two guys now. There's only two guys you could take, right? Who you got?
Who's Avila?
Oh, if you're going to go guard. Oh, actually, I didn't even think that. I was thinking
you can go guard.
Yeah, if you go guard, then Avila.
Well, let me ask you this, Coop. If you're the Jets and you're Joe Douglas, are you looking to trade back right now?
That's an option, too.
Yeah.
I mean, but who is somebody coming up to get? Is it Smith and Jigba? Like, who's the guy? Is it Christian Gonzalez?
I really don't want the Jets to. Yeah, somebody could come up and get Gonzalez. That'd be amazing. Or a team come up and get Michael Mayer. Like, where are if
You know, one name that's falling here is Nolan Smith. I mean, his over under draft position before we started was 11.5, and that's well over now.
That is great. Who's the biggest, Danny? Who's the biggest? Is Smith the biggest dropper, or is it Levis?
Yeah, I've been tracking some of that. So Smith definitely 11.5 was his over under. Broderick Jones just made it under at 14.5, but right now, Smith. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba was 12.5. So if he keeps slipping here, then he's a guy that could be one of the bigger followers too.
I would hate this landing spot for Jackson Smith and Jigba for fantasy, because basically he shows up while Garrett Wilson's the guy and Allen Lazard is eating red zone targets, and he the 2 years it takes him to get like up to speed, by the time that's done, they're going to be looking for another quarterback. So
Smith and Jigba though is a different player, in my opinion. Like he is. I mean, he was the last time we saw him. He was 15 for 347 and 3 touchdowns. That's unbelievable. When I'm watching that game, when they Utah and in Ohio State in that bowl game a couple years ago, I'm looking at this guy like, is this Jerry Rice? Like, that's how crazy he was. So I would love for Smith and Jigba to continue to fall to the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, for the past 2 years, like everything at Ohio State was he's better than Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave.
That's the word.
And both of them went in the top 12 last year, and now here's Smith and Jigba.
I mean, he's good enough type of prospect to where he didn't have to play this year. You know what I'm saying?
He had a hamstring injury.
Yeah, he had a hamstring, all right.
They had Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, like, I don't know. If Joe Burrow had those guys, he would have thrown 60 touchdowns. That's what I saw.
You know, Marvin Harrison Jr.
Stroud
will probably be the first pick of the draft next year.
Yeah, he's looking good.
Let's bring back aboard Garrett Price here. What do you think, Garrett? What do you think the Jets are going to do with this 15th overall pick?
Yeah, I was racking my brain over here trying to figure out where I thought they were going to go. And Bergeron's a possibility there, but he excels more in the run game than he does the pass game, which you would think if you just brought in Aaron Rodgers, you want more pass protection than anything else. So even though it's a fit positionally, I don't know that it's necessarily a fit how he wins. I think Nolan Smith would make a lot of sense for this team, getting some good pass rush off the end. But this is one of the tougher ones to project because there's a few different ways they could go. There's still some good corners out there, but they have a fairly good secondary and they've used good draft capital recently. So Garrett, it's a tough one to really pick here.
Okay, if I was to take away need or any kind of need, best player on the board right now, according to you, is who, Garrett?
Like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably for me, it's probably Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think he's just a difference maker at the wide receiver position. But you know, with all the guys that they've brought in, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me for them to do it.
And the Jets had a fabulous draft last year. You know, you got both rookies of the year, offense and defense. They need to do something not Jet-like and keep the good times rolling.
If they draft Christian Gonzalez to go opposite of Sauce Gardner, that's scary times right now. I mean, that's the exact that's exactly what you have to do if you want to stop. Like, look at the Dolphins, right? Now you can actually cover the two boys. But don't you have to worry about the Patriots? It's just a bunch of tight ends and fullbacks. So they don't really. I don't even know who Sauce is going to cover. You know, so it doesn't really matter with us. But
we're going to hang in here till the Jets make their pick, and then we're going to hand it off to John Mpemba, Kevin Tompkins, and Felix Sharp. They're going to come your way right after the Jets make their selection. But we're still waiting. Yeah,
Park, New Jersey.
I'll tell you this: the longer it goes, I think the more likely it is that they're trading back. I mean, or they're trying to figure out a way to trade back because
it says the pick's in.
Oh, it says the pick is in. The pick is in. Who do they go with? Everyone on record, Garrett. Who do they go with?
I'm gonna go Nolan Smith.
Cool.
I think they're gonna go with the offensive tackle Anton. What's the name? Anton Harrison out of Oklahoma.
I say Nolan Smith.
Nolan Smith. I think they take Christian Gonzalez.
Christian Gonzalez. That'd be crazy if they do that.
Watch us all be wrong.
Why didn't the Patriots just stay in and take Christian Gonzalez? I'm gonna when I get off this stream, dude, I'm getting drunk.
Yeah, you're right. The Dallas Cowboys is coming soon too. So yeah, I'll be.
What are we doing?
Joining you for that.
What are we doing?
The pick is in. I wonder who it is. Do you think they go offense or defense?
I don't know. I feel like they should go O-line.
They should just go BPA, I think.
Yeah, I think I don't know.
If they want to take the pick, I would have tried to move.
I don't think. Here's the problem they have is they're not going to I don't think you can reach for an offensive lineman. I do think they had their offensive lineman that they would have taken go right before him. So now what do? Do you draft the best player on the board or draft a defensive player?
Robert Saleh runs that 4. He converted this from a 3-4 to 4-3.
Pick is in.
With a 4-3, you could take. I mean, they could take anybody here. Really, honestly, what is it? Do we know what it is?
It looks like we're all wrong.
We're all wrong. Who'd they go with? Oh, Iowa State defensive end Will McDonald.
What? Jets. Jets.
That's Jets. Dude, where's Bender? Where's Bender right now, dude?
Iowa State defensive end Will McDonald. Garrett.
Kyle Brady.
Yeah, I'm surprised by this one. I thought he would go in the first, but I was thinking more like mid to late 20s. I thought he was going to be the end of the first round kind of guy. It's an interesting choice. He's a little bit of an older prospect, redshirt senior, coming out there, 6'4", 239. So he's not like this massive framed guy like we had with Tyree Wilson. So it's an interesting selection.
He's got Garrett. It's a reach, right?
It feels like a reach.
It's a reach.
I love that, dude. Yeah, now we're doing happy drinks. Right?
You take an undersized defensive end is interesting.
What are you doing, dude? But I guess, like I said, is a 4-3. They have a plan, I'm sure. But my goodness.
Well, listen, that'll do it for us. Want to welcome aboard Servadidio one more time and say good evening to him and job well done. Your take on the Jets, Will McDonald here, Danny.
This is a guy they could have gotten in like 10 picks, probably.
Yes.
Oh, man.
By the way, before we exit here, I wasn't on for the Eagles pick, but I am an Eagles fan, and I just got to say, Corey, this D-line's going to be haunting Dak.
Don't do it. Hey, listen, let me tell you something. That offensive line is real strong, and it might get stronger tonight. So look for Michael Mayer to be a Dallas Cowboy, if not the best offensive lineman on the board. Michael Mayer projects to be Jason Witten. Perfect pick for the Dallas Cowboys.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
He'd be a great fit there.
Well, that does it for us. Guys, great job for Garrett Price, for Andrew Cooper, for Corey Parson, for Dan Servadidio. Messed up your last name one more time.
It's a hard
Servadidio.
So
yeah, there you
go.
Servadidio. There you go. I'm Marc Malusis. Stay right here. John and Pemba, Kevin Tompkins, Felix Sharp, Lisa Ann, Johnny VTV. They're going to pick up the draft coverage from 10 right up until midnight, from now pick 16 all the way to pick 32. Guys, tremendous job. Congratulations. And thanks to everyone behind the scenes as well. John takes it away next. Guys, thanks for being with us and continued coverage right here. Enjoy getting drunk. All right, Coop?
I deserve it. I deserve it.
There you go. You do deserve it. It's been a long day. Boys, have a good rest of your night. Keep it locked right here. Draft coverage continues on the Bettor Sports Network.
Test your NFL draft knowledge and predict which rookies will be drafted for your chance to win fabulous prizes. This is the 2023 NFL Draft BettorCast on Fantasy Alarm and Bettor Sports Network. Monday Night Rants with Edward Rouse on Bettor Sports Network.
Do you believe in the Madden curse? Do you think that's a real thing?
I did. Now, I don't think it's as big of a deal anymore, but it was a real thing for a solid 10, 15 years.
Yeah, it was Sean Alexander, LaDainian Tomlinson, Peyton Hillis.
LT was never on the cover. I know that.
Was he not? I thought he was one. Okay, well, you do know all the covers of everything.
Yeah, okay. So if you want, I could do this real quick. So Garrison Hurst is the first official Madden cover athlete, 1999. 2000, I believe they still put John Madden on the cover. And then 2001 is where it all started. So 2001, you have Eddie George. 2002, Dante Culpepper. 2003, Marshall Falk. 04, Michael Vick. 05, Ray Lewis, first defensive player on the cover.
Okay.
06, Donovan McNabb. 07, Sean Alexander.
Okay.
08, Vince Young. 09, Brett Favre.
Okay.
10 is a trick one because it's
no way you know.
And Larry Fitzgerald. 11, Drew Brees. 12, Peyton Hillis. 13, Calvin Johnson, I believe so.
You're right.
14.
No way you know all this.
14, also a trick question. I believe that's the Madden 25 cover, and it's Barry Sanders. Unless you got it for the new consoles, in which case Adrian Peterson
Oh my God.
was on the cover.
You're not cheating. You're not looking at.
Swear on my life. Swear on my life.
Okay. Keep on going.
15, you have Richard Sherman.
Okay.
16. Oh, okay, hold on. 16 is Odell Beckham.
Okay.
16. 17. Now, this is the one I get mixed up because 17 and 18 are back-to-back Patriots.
They are.
17, I think, is Gronk, and 18 is Brady.
You are correct.
19 is Antonio Brown.
Correct.
20, Patrick Mahomes.
Oh my goodness.
21, Lamar Jackson. 22, Brady Mahomes. 23, John Madden. But yeah, dude, I'm a cover nerd when it comes to this stuff.
We now know, but that was really impressive. I don't know how.
Thank you.
That's literally 29 of them or something like that. Wow, that is. You did not miss a single one, and you even got the special editions where they had 2 people on the covers.
Monday Night Rants on Bettor Sports Network. It's time for a live report from Fantasy Alarm's Britt Flynn. Test your NFL draft knowledge and predict which rookies will be drafted for your chance to win fabulous prizes. This is the 2023 NFL Draft BettorCast on Fantasy Alarm and Bettor Sports Network.
What's going on, everybody? NFL Draft here, picking up with the Commanders pick now on the clock. Exciting first half of the first round, everybody. How's everybody feeling? Kev, how are you feeling with your Packers selection there? Pick a go.
Not sure I can really say it on air, but I'm sure he's a nice guy. No, I mean, teams can always use an edge rusher. It's just kind of, you got Jordan Love, and for a guy that's tied to Jordan Love more than Brian Gutekunst, you figure you want to maybe give him some weapons or protection up front to help him succeed. But, Lucas Van Ness, if he's a great, edge rusher and what the Green Bay Packers want him to be, then it's a great pick.
Yeah, definitely a great pick there. Johnny, what do you think is the most interesting pick here so far in the first half of the first round?
I'm not trying to be a homer or anything, but my Atlanta Falcons taking Bijan Robinson. I've been very critical of Atlanta and their draft process over the last decade or so. They either go all out, they swing for the fences, and they hit a home run, or it's an absolute bust. We've seen both ways. But I think, Terry Fontenot in the front office, he got it right, man. And I'm really pleased with this. The Atlanta Falcons have been missing that pounding running game since Michael Turner. And even, I guess, a little bit of Devontae Freeman. But with Cordero Patterson possibly on his way out, playing a little bit of a Swiss Army role, Tyler Algier looked fantastic last year as a rookie. I think this is just another punch. And if Atlanta can get up with their offensive line and improve the quarterback play with Desmond Ridder, I think this offense is going to be very scary, and they can put up a lot of points. So very pleased to see it. And shout out to Howard Bender. Called this one, had a winning ticket. HB, shout out, baby. I'm not sleeping on you, kid. Very nice hit.
Yeah, big play there by the Falcons. That line moved heavily and moved quickly from the behind the draft odds were released all the way to plus 3,000 to him being the favorite there today. Felix, what about you? What are your thoughts on the first half of this first round?
My thoughts are that I would hate to be a center or guard in the NFC East with what the Eagles are doing. They had add Jalen Carter to Jordan Davis and Fletcher Cox. It makes no sense. You better be able to protect the middle. I don't know that you're going to be able to with those three. And then, of course, they've got Brandon Graham still running around and chasing quarterbacks down. If they had an edge rusher at some point, that defense is – I don't understand how they continue to be able to do this year in and year out. And they just let value fall to them, elite value. Last year, of course, getting Jordan Davis. This year, getting his former teammate. Let's not forget, guys, though that duo was at the center of that historic 2021 Georgia defense. And now they're back together in Philadelphia. That's a lot of beef. That is a lot of guys who can rush through the interior. When you have defensive tackles who can cause problems in the middle, I mean, it can make your defense so much better. And that's a team that's already really, really good, really well-rounded. So my thoughts is that I would hate to be a center, guard, or a quarterback in the NFC East.
Yeah, for sure. We have a pick in here. Washington Commanders take cornerback Emmanuel Forbes, first cornerback off the board here from Mississippi State. Felix, how's that fit for you with Washington?
Well, listen, I mean, you're going to build around somewhere. Washington, I think, they don't have all of the pieces on offense, so why not take a shot with an SEC, a long SEC corner in Emmanuel Forbes? I would do it myself. A fluid mover there. You see him making some plays on the ball. And let's not forget, we just talked about the Eagles. Darius Slay, another former Mississippi State cornerback. So good pick for the Washington Commanders here.
Currently, the New England Patriots on the clock. That pick in already. New England traded back a little while ago. Christian Gonzalez, cornerback out of Oregon, falling to New England at 17. Took a little bit, but 2 back-to-back cornerbacks off the board now, Felix.
I don't understand his fall. This is one of the more athletic players that we've seen. You need press corners in the NFL, and he is a press corner, a long corner. We thought that he could potentially go in the top 10. I definitely thought he was a potential option for my Lions at 6 when they had the number 6 pick. I don't understand his slide. I think that he plays the game the way you want a physical corner to play. And we've got a couple of long corners in this draft, and he is one of them. Joey Porter Jr. is one. I don't understand this slide, but good pick here. An athlete, a long physical corner who's going to play press man for you.
New England bulking up in the secondary in a division that obviously now has Aaron Rodgers. We know Miami did reloading last year, and then Buffalo, with Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and crew there. We have Detroit on the clock here at pick 18. Johnny, what do we think Detroit should be looking to do after their head-scratching selection of Jahmyr Gibbs earlier in the draft?
I mean, they're building an all-time Madden team on offense here. Their offense, the thing about the Lions is everybody and their mother, that was their sleeper team. And, they showed a lot of reasons why. And I think this year, maybe they take that next jump. Obviously, they got a couple guys popped with that gambling thing. Jameson Williams is going to be out for a little while here. I think it was 6 games. Somebody could correct me on that. But, this Lions offense, even without him, has a lot of firepower. And I really love the Jahmyr Gibbs pick, to be honest, at least for fantasy purposes. Right. I think he could be a real superstar in year 1 under Dan Campbell. But ultimately here, I think, the Lions have been bottom of the barrel in defense and yards and points. And even though they got Aiden Hutchinson, they have a lot of work to do on that front. So I'm looking for the Lions to load up on defense. They have a strong offensive line. They have a strong skill group now. Jared Goff, they seem to be content with him. And, when he's playing within the system and he's kept upright, he's not bad. He might not be the guy to take them to the promised land, but he's certainly good enough to take them to the playoffs, possibly an NFC North title and division that's up for grabs. So I think they got to go heavy on the defensive front now.
Kev, you're Mr. Zero RB in fantasy football. Where does Jahmyr Gibbs now rank for you when it comes to your fantasy football drafts?
Yeah, it's looking like Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be in that 8th, 9th. Just so much ambiguity that those mid rounds. You still got Swift, you got David Montgomery there. It's just
Kevin,
it's a wash.
DeAndre Swift is going to get traded here. Mm-hmm. I think it's a mistake if you think that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to fall to round, pick 8 or so. I mean, I think that he should be, even in Superflex, should be a top 5 pick. This is a guy who's going to catch 100 passes in the NFL, could potentially go 1,000 and 1,000. This is this is one of the best dual threat weapons that we've seen come in the NFL since maybe Christian McCaffrey. How often can you describe a running back as a deep threat? And that is what he was at Georgia Tech. A running back who's a deep threat, you hit him on those wheel routes. I'm just saying, Kev, you my boy. You my boy.
I know.
We've done the open bar together. Listen, I'm telling you, I think that it would be a mistake to think that you can wait until pick 9, pick the late first round to take Jahmyr Gibbs. In my opinion, respectfully, he should be a top 5 pick.
Most drafts we're not drafted with sharps like you and me. We're drafted with Joe Schmo and everybody else that doing their bar league. So maybe they see the Dave Montgomery, they see maybe Swift if he doesn't get traded and think, oh well, it's just a guy that's going to sit behind these 2 guys. But I'll bet on the talent. Bet on Jahmyr Gibbs if I'm going to bet on anybody in this backfield.
Yeah, I'll say if there's anything I know about the Lions backfield is that you never know who's going to be the one to produce. As much as we want, Swift when he was healthy, we'd get Craig Reynolds out there or Justin Jackson out there. I'm hopeful, obviously, like you guys are, that Jahmyr Gibbs is the one to go ahead and take that job here. So the Lions still currently on the clock here at pick 18. Guys, I got to ask you, when it comes to some of the positional depth that's still available, what do you think is the strongest position still there? No wide receivers yet still off the board. What are your thoughts on that there, Felix?
I'm not surprised. We heard that the NFL was not particularly enamored with this wide receiver class. The number one wide receiver for a lot of folks is Jackson Smith-Njigba. Who would you compare Jackson Smith-Njigba to? Cooper Kupp, Cole Beasley, Hunter Renfrow, these slot wide receivers, none of whom were taken on round one. I think Quentin Johnston has the physical tools, but he's not necessarily consistent. So that is something that has not been surprising to me, the fact that these wide receivers have fallen, because it's been considered to be a weaker wide receiver class. Speaking of depth, I want to talk about the Detroit Lions since they're on the clock now. I don't know what the pick is, but you look at the defensive tackle position between Brian Brzee, Mozzie Smith from Michigan. Those could be potentially options if you want a nose tackle right there to take some pressure off of Aiden Hutchinson and command double teams. I think those are potential options here.
Yeah, I think it should be pretty interesting. Their pick is in, not yet announced, but just the fact that, we haven't seen that wide receiver position. There was a lot of guys, we look at these mock drafts all the time. Sometimes we get a little bit too enamored with the mock drafts and fandoms as well. And then you wonder why these guys are falling. So it'll be pretty interesting where someone like you said, Jackson's been thinking about Will Levis is falling down draft boards. There was odds on him earlier today. We did the pre-show. He was minus 500 maybe to land at pick 5, and now we're pick 18, still not off the board.
We got to talk.
That's Reddit for you. That Reddit guy got everybody. That guy was going down with the shit, bro. I mean, that's like the positives and the negatives. Like for regular people trying to bet the draft and how aggressively that market moved a couple days ago. I don't remember if it was Tuesday or even yesterday, but a Reddit guy, for anybody that doesn't know, was tweeting that he was so certain. He talked to Will Levis and he had a source inside the Panthers. They were going to take him number 1 overall, which, quite frankly, doesn't make any sense. I don't think anybody is taking Will Levis ahead of Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, even Anthony Richardson. This kid is possibly a guy, if he gets a little bit more polished, that could be a good quarterback in the NFL. He's a very big physical kid with a huge arm, but I mean, that doesn't always pan out. And It's just kind of funny to see how Reddit is shaping draft markets. We kind of see this every year. Some rumor happens, a guy's number gets absolutely crushed. And, it was absolutely insane to think that Will Levis was going to be anything close to the number 1 pick, even the number 2 with Stroud and Young on the board.
I know that I haven't talked to you, gentlemen, but I've been on record for saying I think Will Levis falls out of the first round, even when he had odds of being the number 1, number 2 overall pick. And he is falling and falling. Let's see if it happens.
Yeah, we have right now ESPN giving draft analytics on their channel. It says 1.8% chance Will Levis would have been available at pick 18. Doesn't seem likely that the Lions go quarterback, but I mean, I guess it's possible at this point. They waited long enough on that offensive side of the ball. It looks like we're getting this pick in pretty momentarily here. They keep on flashing to the green room, staring at Will Levis, waiting for the gentleman to come out here.
I feel like maybe the only team that could possibly take him, I don't think if Tampa doesn't take him, I don't think he goes in the first round. Every single team here is content with their quarterback situation, unless some team deems that they have to trade back into the first round. Tampa right now, the way it looks, is the only possible contender. Assuming the Lions don't take him. I mean, Seattle probably set with Geno. They just paid him. Chargers got Herbie. Lamar's set in Baltimore. You got Vikings, Jags, Giants, Cowboys, Bills, Bengals, Saints, Eagles, and Chiefs. They're all set on QB. So I just don't see him going.
We got the pick coming in here. Jack Campbell, linebacker from Iowa, being selected. Let's bring Lisa Ann in here, get her reaction to this move here. Detroit going defense after taking Jahmyr Gibbs and earlier on. Lisa, what's your thought on Detroit now attacking the defensive side of the ball?
Well, this is making up for lost time, right? They went for the gimme, and Gibbs was the gimme for them, but now they're going to shore up this defense, which is smart. Listening to Johnny talk about, this Will Levis situation. That really is the only place he can go in this first round. And was the hype, it's amazing. Like the Reddit page was taken down. The person was banned from Reddit, but now they're trying to, figure out who started this kind of conspiracy theory. These are crazy phenomenons that happen, change the lines, which you had to know was fluky at that point. Just take it off the board. Just don't even make it available until you figure this out. But I see him sitting as well. And Detroit doesn't really, there's no other need there. They do need wide receivers, though. That's going to be a problem. And I did do the check. It is six games for Williams. Marvin Jones Jr. is still there, but he didn't produce well last year. So they're going to need to add some receivers in the second round.
Felix, what are your thoughts here on Jack Campbell from Iowa?
Yeah, fifth-year player. Iowa did not score a lot of points last year, but Jack Campbell, 125 tackles, if I remember correctly. He's a fine player, go sideline to sideline. I don't know that you necessarily want him guarding tight ends in the seam. But my problem with Detroit is you have to keep your linebackers clean, and I don't know that they necessarily have the defensive tackles, the interior defensive line to do that. Levi Ozarike, he's dealing with a back injury. He's projected as to be the starter on the depth chart. We don't even know if he's healthy. So Brian Brzee still on the board. We still got Mozzie Smith on the board. Mozzie Smith, 337 pounds. If you got Jack Campbell there, fine, but keep him clean. Keep him clean with some interior defensive line.
Kev, the Bucs wasted no time. Their pick is already in. Do we think maybe this is a Will Levis selection for Tampa Bay?
I mean, I can't imagine that Baker Mayfield goes into week one as the starter here without some kind of competition behind him. And I don't really count Kyle Trask as competition, honestly. So, being able to shore up, a guy for the future, Will Levis. Yeah. I mean, you had to think they had no idea he was going to be there at 19. It's just kind of gift wrap for him.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty interesting here again. Just how quick, that pick was kind of put in, almost like they couldn't wait to get
pretty telling
to the board here. We'll wait and see. Obviously, I agree. Listen, there's almost no bigger Baker Mayfield hater, I don't think, than myself. You go check my Twitter timelines. I've been calling him trash since he basically came into the league. So I was a little surprised to see him continue to find more opportunities in Tampa Bay. Going from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield's a little bit of a downslant here. So would like to see them maybe take an attempt to restart their future. So it'll be pretty interesting to see. Felix, what other team needs do you think Tampa Bay would have to address here if it's not the quarterback position?
Just about it. It was not wide receiver, but I think that they could have needs anywhere. I would quarterback would be the main one. Quarterback would be the main one, and I kind of don't know where they would go because this is a team that's rebuilding. They are aging kind of all over the place, and so you could see potentially some turnover on that team in the next 2 to 3 years. So when a team is built that way, kind of at the tail end of its window, they could go anywhere with their potential pick. So, I don't have a guess here because they can go any number of spots.
Right. Yeah, as we move our way a little bit further down the draft board, Goodell announcing it now. Cansey, defensive tackle from Pittsburgh, going to Tampa Bay. So they're going interior defensive lineman here. Shaking your head a little bit there, Felix?
Yeah, he's undersized. He's 280 pounds. He did have the fastest 40 times since 2006, but I want my interior defensive linemen to be, I don't really care if they're fast. I want them to be able to disrupt and play with power. That will be my question this year. So it must be the injury to Brian Brzee because he was the number one defensive tackle in that 2020 class. He had injuries last year, shoulder injury, knee injury, just a really disruptive force. This defensive lineman is, I forgot it. You can say his name again, but he's 280 pounds. 280-pound interior defensive lineman. So I guess I would assume that he's going to be playing some defensive end play outside also. They must think that he's really athletic and can translate those skills. But I kind of get nervous when I see white defensive linemen. So those are my thoughts.
Lisa, thoughts on Tampa Bay going to the defensive tackle route here?
Well, that's what they were planning for. They had no interest in a quarterback. They do believe they like the short-term one-year deal they have with Baker. But building that defense, I'm sure Brady's like, I wish they had done that when I was there for sure. But they do need a lot of work. Wide receivers are great, but slowing down. How many more years will they get out of Mike Evans? Godwin was banged up a bit last year, and we know that, the running backs not looking great either. So they can do a lot, but this was the move.
Seattle on the clock here right now. Lisa, if we're taking a guess on where they may be going with their selection, what are your thoughts? They obviously made an interesting pick earlier in the draft. Did they make anything exciting here?
Well, that they definitely want to get that defense back, right? They want to get that Legion of Boom back. They want to get that 12th man. So if they continue to build the defense because they feel confident, but they could go for a tight end right here, which would be a great asset for Geno Smith as well.
Yeah, I agree.
This is a really deep tight end class. To co-sign on Lisa's point there, Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer, Tucker Kraft. I mean, there are a lot of different. Sam Laporta. If they want to go tight end here, there are a lot of guys who could be schematic advantages here. So that wouldn't be a bad pick.
Yeah, we haven't seen any yet. I know Andrew Cooper, our tight end whisperer earlier, was kind of touting some of the top tight ends on the board and where they may go. There was really good odds on 2 tight ends being taken in the first round. He kind of mocked out having 3 tight ends possibly going for the first round there. So it'll be pretty interesting to see kind of how that all goes back. Let's bring Johnny V back in here, kind of get his reaction to what went on there with the Lions pick.
Yeah, Detroit, not surprised here. We just talked about it. They have to build up that defense. The offense is going to be humming this year. They're going to be a team kind of like last year that could be, near the top of the leaderboard in terms of points per game. But last year, on the same token, they were also bottom of the board in allowing points per game. Their defense needed to improve. And, this NFC North now is up for grabs. Like, Minnesota is not a dominant team. I think they kind of overachieved a little bit last year, with Kevin O'Connell stepping into the play caller head coach role. But Detroit, if they want to truly contend, they have to build that defense, mainly the front seven. And they got a huge piece last year, Aiden Hutchinson. He had a big season. There was a real shot that if Sauce Gardner didn't go off the way he did, Hutchinson was going to be the defensive rookie of the year. And, I like that pick. Iowa breeds studs. Those boys are big. They're strong. They're athletic. They're ballers out there. So I think getting Campbell makes sense for them. And they just got to continue to build that defense from the inside out, because that's typically how a successful defense is built in the NFL.
Felix, you got additional thoughts on Campbell there?
Yeah, I do. I think this is a Dan Campbell pick. We're talking about a fifth-year player. He's been in college for 5 years. You still got Drew Sanders on the board. I question the positional value of drafting a run-stopping linebacker here in the first round. The Lions have a habit of doing this. I can't remember the last guy's name from Florida they picked, who was
Gerard Davis.
Gerard Davis, who's obviously no longer with the team. He might not even be in the NFL anymore. This feels like Dan Campbell saying, go get me a football player, and they go get Jack Campbell, who I'm sure is going to be fine. But again, like, the NFL now is one in the passing game. It's one with left tackles. It's one with pass rushers. And I don't know that taking a linebacker, this particular linebacker, this early, gives you that value. But you know what? They picked up an extra second-round pick with that trade with the who did they trade with? Not the Cardinals. Whoever they traded with, they picked up their second-round pick. So maybe they make it up again and I still think that defensive tackle is a problem for this team. So, it's not only the player, but I don't know that you have the interior defensive line to keep this guy clean, to allow him to play sideline to sideline.
Yeah.
One quick point. Sorry, real quick
before
we move on from the Lions. I think, kind of speaking to playing, a lot of teams will tell you, and just based off common sense, they're going to draft to defend who's in their division. And the guy I think they have to worry about now is Justin Fields. Justin Fields should be a lot better this year. He was awesome as a runner. He was taking over games for the Bears. And obviously, he has to improve as a passer. He made way too many interceptions in clutch moments, but you would think that's coming. Now they add DJ Moore to the picture, but you have to have a guy that's going to be able to contain Justin Fields and not let him run all over you, as Fields did last season. So I think that's probably on the priority list for Detroit as well. Whether that's going to be, I don't think they would go outside linebacker, but somebody along the lines that could really keep Fields at bay when they play against them.
And Chicago going offensive line, which they had to do, obviously, taking Darnold, right? You got to protect him, man. I was talking about this with Kevin Coop on the Lightning Round show. You got to give your man an opportunity to show what he can do, and he can't do that if as soon as the ball is snapped, there's two defensive players already in the backfield. A lot of these highlight runs from Justin Fields were broken plays where he's running for his life, and he's just more athletic than the defensive guys at him. So they went ahead and went, obviously, offensive line early. So we have Seattle here on the clock. It looks like they're close to running out. If we're following ESPN now, 20 seconds left. Pick still isn't in. So.
Let me say this about Seattle. Seattle and Minnesota are one of those teams that they draft elite athletes. If you look at the players that they pick, DK Metcalf is one. I could come up with some other. Amir Abdullah spent time with the Vikings. They're always looking for these guys who are like 99th percentile athletes. So let's see if that stays consistent here with this pick.
Yeah, pick finally in. It was like 15 seconds left. So either they were working on a trade or trying to figure out where they were going. It seems like that move has been made. So we'll see where Seattle goes ahead. Kev, what's your thoughts here on Seattle on the clock?
I mean, there's a lot of places where they could go. I mean, it's wild to me that even though its wide receiver class is not the greatest, we certainly thought it was going to be great this time last year. Looking forward to it, but I mean, tight ends are still out there too. I'm very, this Brian Branch is out there too. There's a lot out there for Seattle. They never take who you think you're going to take. They always kind of take that off the wall selection, going back to like Jordan Brooks. So. It'd be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, so I agree with you. Obviously, they have, the wide receiver talent that they have with Lockett and Metcalf there, strong on the outside. They got Geno coming off of pretty much a career year. Running back.
If they want to double up on corner, you still got Joey Porter Jr., a longer physical corner who can play press man. I don't know if Seattle's still running cover 3, but when you think about the long corners that they've had with Seattle, Joey Porter Jr. definitely fits that bill. 6'3" to 192. Probably is not as fluid of an athlete as you would want, but who else wasn't? Richard Sherman. So a longer player. So that's a potential option there, Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State.
Yeah, Seattle not having a problem scoring last year, but stopping teams was an issue. So you kind of lock up, get some defensive players here. They're walking to the stage here now. So a little show here from Goodell as he goes ahead and makes the pick. So we'll bring it to everybody live as it comes here. Johnny, when it comes to some of the betting odds here for positional players, anything that's popping out to you right now?
Yeah, the thing with Seattle is they have to continue to be able to match teams in the NFC West. I mean, you would think I personally think San Francisco's a little over-optimistic with Brock Purdy. Anybody that knows baseball knows Tommy John surgery, which is rare for a QB. I think the last guy I remember is Jake Delhomme, like 20 years ago. That could be 12 to 14 months. Now, obviously, throwing a football is different than throwing a baseball, but that could be a long recovery process. And I just think that San Fran is a little overly optimistic with that. Luckily, you got a great run game, the zone run schemes, but, me personally, I would have looked for Seattle to go defense front seven, but certainly doesn't look like that if you want.
It looks like they went wide receiver. First one off the board, Jackson Smith and Nick Jigba off of Ohio State here going to the Seahawks.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, he's going to be a slot wide receiver with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf playing on the outside. It's a perfect wide receiver core for Geno Smith now. The question with Jackson Smith and Jigba was his top end speed and the ability to play outside. Well, guess what? He doesn't have to in Seattle. We don't even have to answer that question. Tyler Lockett is going to be the deep threat. DK Metcalf can do everything. And Jackson Smith and Jigba gets to play the Cooper Kupp role and dominate in the middle, in the intermediate game. It looks like Geno Smith might be a dude for the next couple of years if they're building around him like this. Again, if they would have added tight end, this tight end class is super deep. So they got their wide receiver here. They got Devon Witherspoon early on. If Geno Smith can add a tight end, I might be looking to move. I don't know, Kev. I might be looking to move some picks so I can pick up Geno Smith here for the future.
Kev, what are your thoughts on the pick of JSN here to Seattle?
Yeah, it shows some pretty decent confidence in Geno Smith that they're willing to build for him, getting a guy that can play in the slot primarily. I mean, Tyler Lockett's on the other side of 30 right now, so that's a pretty seamless transition. It feels like to go from Lockett and then transitioning into Smith and Jigba. Obviously, he could certainly play in 3 wide receiver sets. That makes them pretty potent to keep going, to go toe to toe with these teams in the NFC West. So I really like that. And for like best ball, I mean, I just say that's a pretty nice spot to take a guy like that, maybe the 6th or 7th round in the upcoming Best Ball Mania 4.
I think Seattle has made some questionable decisions in their drafts in years prior. I really like what they're doing today. I mean, I think it fits. Devon Witherspoon is a guy who's going to get you the ball back on defense. He can go get interceptions, make plays on the ball. And then, I was not a fan of Jackson Smith-Njigba as a wide receiver 1. Man, he doesn't have to be there in Seattle. So I like what they're doing, how they're building.
I think personally, sorry, real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
I think JSN is an awesome pick here. I probably would have preferred to see Seattle go defense because, their defense got ran over by San Francisco in the playoffs last year. And, that's the kind of team you've got to contend with if you want to be a team that makes a deep run in the playoffs, because chances are San Francisco's going to always be standing in your way because they have a lot of young guys that are here to stay for a long time. But I think ultimately here, Seattle should have no problem scoring. I think this is going to be an offense with Kenny Walker coming back off an insane year. Geno Smith, comeback player of the year, huge ticket on him. Little how you doing? I think ultimately this is an offense that might be scoring 27 points per game. Geno looks cooking. JSN to go along with Tyler Lockett, who just makes some of the most acrobatic catches I've ever seen in my life. And you got Papa DK Metcalf, a grown man among men with 0% body fat pretty much. I got to get this guy's diet. I don't know how he does it, but I think this is a good pick, and Seattle's offense should absolutely pump in year 2 under Geno.
What a turnaround from like the perception of this offense last year, where we're wondering Geno Smith and Drew Lock with those 2 weapons, and now we've done a complete 180.
Yeah, I lucked into Geno for $1 in an auction draft and a super flex as a QB2, and didn't turn back after that one. We got the Chargers on the clock here. Let's bring in Lisa Ann, get her take on what she thinks maybe the Chargers are going to be looking to do here at pick 21.
Well, let me go right back to Seattle. I think this is fantastic for Geno Smith, and it was incredible to see him have the season that he had last season, right? DK is so reliable. Lockett is like my absolute favorite best ball draft player like ever, even though I'll have him on some of my season leagues. It's just he hits so hard some games, and then he's lukewarm. Yeah, the acrobatic catches like Johnny just said. But for the Chargers, I really think they need to work on their defense. And I also think another receiver would be great. But like we've been talking about, like we've all been talking about with this draft, wide receiver depth isn't that deep. So if they go defense right here, they know they have Eckler. Williams gets a bit banged up, which does concern me about the longevity for both of those receivers, Williams and also Keenan Allen.
Yeah, I've seen tight ends mocked in this spot potentially as well. So it seems like there's a mix where, depending on who your kind of sources are, whether they're going offense or defensive side of the football, the pick is in. So we'll have to wait and see how quickly Goodell makes his way up to the podium here to see where he goes. Felix, what are you thinking on the Chargers pick here? I think we got you muted there.
I think you just go best player available. I still like Joe Porter Jr. from Penn State, 6'3", 192 pounds, can play physically, play press man. I still like Brian Brzee. At the wide receiver position, I don't think that they're going to go there. So I think that they'll add to that defense. Mozzie Smith, again, who can play in the interior. And then, let's see. The tight end class is really deep. So Dalton Kincaid, and Michael Mayer. I love me some Michael Mayer. His ability to make contested catches in the seam. Those are probably my best available.
Noted Chargers fan Ed Rouse in the chat here. Edward Rouse, please pass catching tight end. So we know where that fandom is leaning. Listen, I'm high on anybody that's on this Chargers offense as long as Justin Herbert there is their quarterback. Should be maximum offensive production really out of that offensive. They add a pass catching tight end. Fantastic. Defensively, though, you look at that division, you could certainly use a little help knowing you're running up against, the Chiefs and, maybe a revamped Broncos team. The Goodell at the podium, they go wide receiver, Quentin Johnston out of TCU. Felix, reaction to the pick?
I mean, he's probably the best size-adjusted wide receiver in this class. He's been inconsistent. He doesn't always catch the ball with his hands. But the thing about Quentin Johnston is he has elite after-the-catch ability. So even though he has some trouble catching the ball downfield, use him the same way the Denver Broncos used Demaryius Thomas, throwing him jailbreak screens, allowing him to run up the sideline with his blocks there, throw him slants, throw him short stuff. The thing with these young players is they can do the things that they're comfortable with while other areas of their game develop. No, he's not the most consistent player that you'll see, but he is one of the best after-the-catch wide receivers in this class, and obviously you're matching him up with Justin Herbert. It's really an easy target to throw to if you think about it, the way you can scheme him up. They're going to use him on screens, occasionally throwing the ball downfield. He can win 50-50 balls. That 2021 game against Oklahoma, he damn near took over the game by himself on the road in Norman, Oklahoma. That's his ceiling. That's his ceiling. Some flaws in his game, but he has all the physical tools of Jackson Smith-Njigba and Quentin Johnston here. Quentin Johnston is the one that's built like an X, who can be an alpha wide receiver, who could potentially be a DK Metcalf type. So let's see if he can develop and turn into that.
Lisa, thoughts on the fit here with Johnson now going up, pairing out Mike Williams, Keenan Allen,
This is the perfect fit. And, you had mentioned Edward Rouse in the chat. He said, well, week 2 after Williams is hurt, this will be great. I love the wide receiver 3 option. And I think having that movement out there and that yak is going to really help Herbert. Because we know Herbert has an arm, but we also know he doesn't have consistency with his receivers being on the field. But this was a good move. Next, they got to look at defense.
Kev, from a fantasy perspective, thoughts here on Johnson going to the Chargers?
Yeah, we talked on the pre-show about what would be a perfect wide receiver for the Chargers to take, and I talked about Jordan Addison. Clearly, they thought Quentin Johnston would be certainly in a draft wide receiver class full of smaller guys. He is the X. He is the grown man, I guess, comparatively speaking. But yeah, I really do like the fit there, and we know just supplying a quarterback with weapons never hurts. So getting
really doesn't,
No.
Really, as a Patriots fan, it's painful watching them not supply their quarterback.
I shouldn't know about that. I'm a Packer fan, so
if you need a wide receiver, I really hope that you get one soon, because after Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison, in my opinion, I think that there's a steep drop to the next guys. If you think it's Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, I do like Marvin Mims. I like Josh Downs too, but I think that there's a little bit of a tier gap after the next 2 guys, Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers. I think can play all 3 wide receiver positions, so you get a little bit of versatility.
A team that could use a wide receiver potentially on the clock right now, the Baltimore Ravens. Let's bring Johnny back in here, see what he thinks that Baltimore's going to do. They re-signed Lamar Jackson today to a big deal. They bring in a new offensive coordinator that's kind of known for that, downfield passing attack. They signed Odell Beckham. Where do you think the Ravens attack at their pick here?
I think the Ravens got to get back to what – I mean, obviously we have to see what happens with DeAndre Hopkins first. There's rumors $18 million a year, an absolute stud, because he's a guy who just can't stay on the field, bag for 1 year. If D-Hop goes, and I say they go defense, that's really the identity of Baltimore Ravens defense. Eric DeCosta has just been an absolute savant in getting these older players on 1 or 2 year deals. They ball out. They help the team win games. I think that's the identity, man. Baltimore, people complain that Lamar is playing in a certain system that doesn't allow him to tap into his potential. That might be true. I mean, sure, they could use a receiver here to go along with Andrews, especially since they traded Hollywood Brown away or let him go to Arizona. But ultimately, I do think that, Baltimore needs to keep stacking up on that defense. They need to press guys like Joe Burrow in this division, because let's call it what it is. Baltimore's secondary is not what it was. Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey, they're big names right now. They're press corners, but coming off serious knee injuries, they showed they really, really struggled with keeping up with speedy, greasy, fast wide receivers like the Dolphins, like the Bengals. And that's ultimately what's going to be coming down to them. So I think Baltimore's going to keep building that offense. And like I said, maybe they do get a D-Hop, but they have to keep adding to that defense, because if they don't, it doesn't matter how many points they're going to score, because they're going to give up a boatload and not win any type of meaningful playoff games.
Yeah. Kev, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, like I'm looking at Baltimore. I mean, Baltimore has a dubious history with drafting wide receivers going back to like this millennium. I mean, we're talking like Mark Clayton. I mean, you throw Rashad Bateman in there, I guess, but I mean, jury's still out. I mean, you could probably draft a corner there. You could probably draft like a Zay Flowers, but I mean, it's tough for the Ravens. I think you got to
tell you who I like.
Find a way to
Ravens. Nolan Smith. I like Nolan Smith, the defensive end / outside linebacker out of Georgia, another former #1 overall recruit in his class. And I also like Drew Sanders, the linebacker from Arkansas who transferred from Alabama, who can rush the passer, play sideline to sideline. Baltimore Ravens are a defensive team. So let's give them let's see if they take one of the better defensive players still on the board, both of whom are pass rushers.
And honestly, like Felix was saying, the Ravens have been missing that key inside linebacker, the Mike, the guy who does it all, who makes every tackle, who can cover, and just the heart and soul since CJ Mosley. Mosley was awesome for the Ravens. He gets the bag for the Jets. He's been okay, but like CJ Mosley was the quarterback of that defense. And teams had a tough time week in, week out when he was out there. So they need that kind of guy to get back to re-anchoring this defense and really making them one to fear, because that's really where they were successful over the last 20 years, when they had a strong inside Mike linebacker that just anchored the entire field on that side.
The pick is in here. They showed the war room, a lot of hugs, a lot of handshakes. So seemingly got the guy that they were looking for based on those reactions. So as soon as we see Goodell walk up, we'll have an idea on exactly the direction they're going. I definitely think that eventually wide receiver should be something that they take a look at. As you mentioned, OBJ, what can you honestly expect from him given the knee injuries and the missed time? Bateman coming off of a season-ending injury. If they want to run this spread offense now that they're kind of bringing in, they're going to need the talent that can do it. You can't have him, Lamar Jackson out there, throwing to glorified kick returners as your wide receiver one. So I'll be interested to see the direction that they end up attacking on this one here. So again,
if they want to go with a Nick Saban guy, if you want to go to a Nick Saban guy, safety Brian Branch could potentially be an option here. You could probably wait for somebody like Branch, but the Ravens to me are a defensive team in the first round and an offensive line team. Like that's where they go trenches, they go defense. So I kind of think that's where they go.
We got the pick, Zay Flowers going
Todd
to
Monken.
The Baltimore Ravens. So
the thing with that is, if they were going to go wide receiver, they like these small, fast, speedy receivers.
Yeah, they do.
And that's always what they draft. That's what they got from Hollywood Brown. And, there's nothing wrong with that. I think Zay Flowers is a good pick there. Don't get me wrong. It's just, they need some size at wide receiver. They need one of those 6'4" towers like a Quentin Johnston would have been. I think that would have actually been the perfect pick for the Ravens. Too bad the Chargers got him one pick early. It's not the end of the world. It's not a bad pick by any stretch of the imagination. Now, if they get D-Hop and they have Zay Flowers, D-Hop, and Odell Beckham to go along with Mark Andrews, then I think we're going to see something here. But definitely a priority for Baltimore to continue to stack that defense, because
is there any worry at all that Flowers, his stock and profile really, built it up on the combine? He's the best player on one of the worst offenses in college football in Boston College. He's the only guy they really gave the football to. Is that stat padding? Is the talent really there for him? And did he just kind of help himself with his offseason sort of programs there? What are your thoughts there, Felix?
No, Zay Flowers is an absolute beast. He's one of the best after-the-catch wide receivers in this class, and he performed as a true freshman. He's a guy that can make defenders look silly after the catch. You see him here tracking the ball downfield. I'm sorry, my hesitation there was I agree with what Johnny was saying. Like the Ravens tend to draft the same profile of wide receiver year in and year out. And if I'm coaching Lamar Jackson, I kind of want him to have guys that have large catch radiuses, so bigger wide receivers. Somebody like Cedric Tillman that you could have taken later in the draft. He's most comfortable throwing over the middle to a Mark Andrews type. Why not get him more size and length, guys who can go get the ball? I love Zay Flowers as a player. I do not like this match here with the Ravens because from the fantasy perspective, he's not going to get a ton of volume with the Ravens, at least in my opinion. So no, Zay Flowers, I said that he was one of the two best wide receivers left on the board. He's got a lot of versatility. I don't like this match here with the Ravens. I don't.
Kev, what are your thoughts here on Flowers now in Baltimore?
Yeah, he is the quintessential I like him better in best ball player for the Ravens. Like when you put him in a group with a bunch of guys like the Devin Duvernays and the James Proches and now you've got also Odell Beckham there, Nelson Aguilar. Like it's just a glut of veteran guys. And can Flowers, fly above those guys? I mean, maybe time will tell, but at least this year, if you're drafting him in fantasy, he's either a guy that you draft in the last pick in a redraft, or you're taking him in probably the last, 4 or 5 rounds in a best ball.
Yeah. You think about what the Carolina Panthers did with Cam Newton when they had Devin Funchess and Kelvin Benjamin and Greg Olsen. Like they drafted guys with length to kind of account for Cam's weaknesses. And now I'm not saying that Lamar Jackson's not an elite passer, but the style of wide receiver that I would want from him are guys who are more possession wide receivers who can win contested catches. Make his job easier. And that's not what Zay Flowers is. He's a guy that, I think that you're going to get the ball in more like precision routes. And I just don't know that is Lamar Jackson's strength as good as he is. So, I mean, if I was that front office and, they've won Super Bowl, so I can't say anything bad about that front office, but like I would be leaning towards the Devin Funchess types, the Calvin Benjamin types.
The only way I don't hate this pick. Like I said, I think it's a solid pick. Like you made a great point about Zay Flowers being a very good, possibly the best wide receiver in this class. It's just, as you were alluding to, the fit. Does this fit the Ravens style of play? Because they do tend to draft the same profile wide receiver, super athlete, super fast, but typically aren't guys that jump off the screen in terms of, their stats and what they do game to game outside of like hitting a couple big home runs. So the only way I think this really works is if they manage to go trade for DeAndre Hopkins, because then that brings a big wide receiver with a big catch radius to go along with a speedster like Flowers, a guy with Odell, who if he stays on the field, he can be very productive. Another possession guy who can get down the field if his knee's holding up. And then obviously you got Mark Andrews, who is pretty much a wide receiver at this point, who can operate the middle of the field and the red zone. So if they go and get Hopkins, now all of a sudden this pick looks a lot different. And Flowers doesn't have to be pressured to be the number one option on this offense. He could kind of coast into that number 3 and get going as the season goes on.
Let's bring Lisa Ann in here, get her reaction to Zay Flowers now landing in Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, another, like you said, small receiver, but a fit with Odell and another backup, I think, out of the concern for Odell's health, right? Staying on the field, the surgery. I think he's going to have a great season, but I know to have someone there as a 3, again, making sure that they're not relying on just that. And here we go. We're not really looking at defense here, but right now looking at the Vikings, everyone thinks this is going to be the Will Levis move, and I just don't.
I mean, there have been rumors now for a bit that they've been potentially looking at moving on from Cousins, right? Kellen Mond obviously wasn't the answer there for them. Levis, every time ESPN flashes to the green room there, he's kind of standing around looking like, when's it going to be my turn? They keep on flashing this like analytics 0.5% chance he was going to be here at this pick. You start feeling bad for the guy a little bit that they kind of dragged him out there and they keep now just spotlights all on him.
Well, he did make the news this week, so that's really what's going to happen here, right? But you're right, though, that could be a good fit. It could be the move for him, for them to have Levis there. with Cousins.
If there's anything that will show future draft prospects what not to do, don't tell anybody you put mayonnaise in your coffee.
That is the grossest thing I've ever seen or
It's
heard anyone
disgusting.
do.
He eats bananas with the peel on.
He
Okay,
is
I've
a
heard that
different
many
breed of
times
cat.
before, but like that's not even like at first I was like, is that like a keto thing? Like when people put butter in their coffee, that's like a keto thing. Like how would you even do that? Whatever made him inspired to this? A lot of people are gonna ask.
I'm not a condiments guy in general, so I certainly would not be putting any mayonnaise in my coffee. That is that's
To think we made fun of Mahomes for putting ketchup on steak,
Right.
this has nothing on that.
Yeah, no, not at all. We got a little under a minute left to go here. Felix, what do you think Minnesota should be looking to do here with their pick?
Yeah, this is a team, like I said earlier, that they really value athleticism. So, historically they have. And so I don't know who that would be on the board right now. I still think Joey Porter Jr. is an option. I still think Brian Brzee is an option out of Clemson. Miles Murphy, the edge rusher out of Clemson. I think that they could go a number of ways, but off the top of my head, I think that those are the guys that I would feel comfortable with.
We got the pick in here. Kev, any projections for where you think Minnesota may be looking to do here?
Yeah, if there's any team that really needs a corner, it's Minnesota. Like Patrick Peterson's gone, they have Booth, but like you gotta be able to put something on the other side. So like Joey Porter Jr. seems like a really nice pick for them, but we'll see what happens. I just don't get it. I don't get the slide.
Yeah, they ranked 26th in DVOA against the pass. Of course, we know that infamous blowout. They could score. They couldn't stop anybody. It was one of the laughable reasons where they were underdogs, to the Lions when they were undefeated. It's like they just had no opportunity when they were on the road to display any defense at all here. So will be interesting to see when Goodell walks up who they got right now. It looks like the ESPN is in a commercial. Seeing some Twitter rumblings, but I don't want to go ahead and spoil it for anybody there. So Minnesota is obviously an interesting team. They lost Adam Thielen, obviously, in the offseason. They traded for TJ Hawkinson, and he was an absolute monster for them in that offense, pairing up well with Justin Jefferson. They got nice running backs there. So defensive side of the football is clearly the spot you would think that they would be looking to attack.
Do you think that they'll hold on to Dalvin Cook this year? I mean, I think that that's a question. And could they potentially fill that spot if he's going to leave? We saw the Lions earlier take Jahmyr Gibbs. We would expect for DeAndre Swift to be on the trading block. I mean, I think that that's potentially an option. You got an aging Dalvin Cook there. So I would watch out for that one too.
Yeah, I know Andrew Cooper has kind of talked about that a little bit, what they're going to end up doing. It looks like the pick is in Jordan Addison from USC. Going to Minnesota. So you mentioned two top wide receivers that were left on the board. They're now gone there, Felix.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Addison, he got Kenny Pickett drafted in the first round last year. This is a guy who came in as an athlete in the 2020 class. He could have played safety or corner. He ends up playing wide receiver. Again, another player who has been productive each and every year that he's been in college, including as a true freshman at Pitt before he transferred to USC. A Biletnikoff Award winner. I mean, that for college awards, Biletnikoff Award winners tend to do really well in the NFL. As I said earlier with Jordan Addison, I think that he can play all three positions. He can play flanker if you want him to. He can play a little bit of slot if you want him to, and he can play X if you want him to. He's not as big as you would want an X to be, but is just a versatile player. And they got him there with Justin Jefferson. He doesn't have to worry about coverage being rolled to his side when Justin Jefferson is on the field. So it looks like they're going to roll with Kirk Cousins. Man, that is a really good weapon for Kirk Cousins there. The Vikings, man, the Eagles, they've had some really good drafts with their picks. I like this one too.
They're going to keep just scoring points. Lisa, thought on Addison now in Minnesota.
Yeah, they're just going to keep scoring points. I mean, pair him up with Justin Jefferson. It's going to be amazing. I still think they could take a quarterback in the next round, since that's probably where Levis is going to be sitting.
He's going to keep on falling for sure. Let's bring back in Johnny here. He seems to have a pretty strong reaction to Addison now heading over into Minnesota.
Listen, I think Addison,
Great in college. I think he could translate well to the pros. I am prejudiced towards USC wide receivers. Very rarely do they pan out over the years. I mean, you get a couple guys that have made splashes and they fizzled out, like a Robert Woods kind of guy, Juju. Very rarely does it usually pan out. But that aside, of course, you needed a strong 2 to go alongside Jetta, the offensive player of the year, another preseason pick of mine. No big deal. But, this team does need defense at some point. There's a couple studs there, but like you were talking about, they're missing the ghost of Xavier Rhodes. Like when Xavier Rhodes was creme de la creme in the cornerback room about a decade ago, they were really tough to play against. So I think they definitely got to go back to the defensive side of the ball because, them scoring 27 points a week is all well and good. But this defense, especially with the aging secondary, they have the tendency to give up 30 points plus, maybe half the weeks that they're going to be playing. So they definitely got to address that side of the ball. I don't really understand the fact that they continue to ignore it. A guy like Harrison Smith is not going to be around forever. This guy's getting up there in age. Daniil Hunter, he's still young, but he had a bad injury a couple of years ago. So they have to address that side of the ball.
Giants making a trade, moving up one spot, flipping with Jacksonville here. Kev, what do you think New York may be looking to do, moving up just the spot?
I mean, they certainly need a corner as well, so I can't just bang the drum for Joey Porter. But I will say just a quick point on the Jordan Addison thing. The Vikings play so few personnel as far as guys that are getting on the field. So if Jordan Addison can just jump over KJ Osborne for fantasy, he might be the top wide receiver, honestly. Like if he can leapfrog over KJ Osborne, I really like him to be able to play 80 to 90% of the snaps and just, be that second guy to Justin Jefferson for the wide receiver position.
I mean, listen, if you can break into that offense there, do you think that he has the ability to be, the way we saw Hawkinson so involved there, does Addison come in and outpace Hawkinson for fantasy value for you? Does that bump Hawkinson down at all? Or do you find that Hawkinson still ranks there more as the 2 in that offense?
I mean, Hawkinson's probably still the 2, but I think Jordan Addison can at least challenge that. We saw KJ Osborne blow up last year, especially in that Colts game. He had a couple games where he had 16 targets. So, I mean, there's so much opportunity in that Vikings offense where they play so few guys that if Jordan Addison can find a foothold into 80% or 90% of the snaps and run the routes, then it's wheels up for him.
Yeah, for sure here. We got the Giants pick in, so we'll go ahead and see what's going on there. Felix, any final thoughts here on what you think the Giants might be doing with their trade-up?
I mean, I think that if they're going to commit to Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, they can continue to add to that offensive line. Cody Mock was, a Senior Bowl standout out of North Dakota State. I don't really have. I mean, they had Darren Waller from Oakland. They still need wide receivers, but I don't know that there's a wide receiver here that I would take. So let's protect our franchise quarterback. And since there's not a wide receiver available that I'd like, tight end. They could maybe they double up on tight end because the tight ends are really strong. Again, Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer. Maybe you just say, hey, we're going to pair Michael Mayer with Darren Waller and attack defenses that way. So that would be unconventional, but maybe that's an option too.
Yeah, certainly could be an interesting spot here to see. Why don't we hit a quick break here? We'll get the Giants pick on the way back. Felix, thanks for joining us here tonight on the BettorCast stream here for the NFL Draft, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys. You guys have fun.
Sure. So we'll go ahead and hit a quick break here, and then when we get back, we'll talk about this Giants draft pick, as it looks like that pick will be coming in.
Streaming live on Fantasy Alarm and Bettor Sports Network. Moose and Keith. Weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern.
The word genius is there. Bob Glover, it describes him. Bob, so when's the last time that Twitter defeated you? Because I've been defeated by Twitter today.
I'll tell you how Twitter defeated me one time. I had the mistaken impression that the year that Troy Polamalu won the Defensive Player of the Year, it looked like it was going to go to Clay Matthews Jr. and I tweeted it. And there was a guy on the media bus. He was like, "Oh yeah, he's got it. A guy I trust." I won't tell you who it was, but his initials are Mike Garafolo. So I went with it. Got a DM from Rich Eisen, NFL Network. He goes, "You sure about that?" I go, "Oh man. Oh, I just got this wave because like accuracy to me is really important.
Yeah.
So I'm literally on the media bus. We're just getting back from media day. We are slipping and sliding in Dallas. It's snowing. I get off the bus. I open my laptop. I am hunched over, and I just like literally people are passing me. Bob, what's wrong? And it was Palomalu, and Adam Schefter had retweeted me. Trey Wingo had retweeted me. I'm like, oh, I'm dead.
So when it's Palomalu, then how do you handle that? Like, what was the subsequent tweet
I think
afterward?
I said got some bad Twitter info. I didn't put Garafalo's name on there. I had
10 years later, you can out him. I like that. Yeah.
You know, he wouldn't mind that. He knows the stories.
Yeah.
He actually said to me, "Hey, Bob, I think you might have jumped the gun on that." I was like, "Oh, crap." There we go.
Campus to Canton on the Bettor Sports Network.
Would Dion bench Shador?
I don't think he would.
Like, how bad would it have to be? Because we've seen horrendous quarterback play from this Colorado team for the last, 4 years, 5 years? JT Stroud, Brandon Lewis, just terrible quarterback play. Like, they were 131st, which is dead last in pass EPA per play. Obviously, it will be better, but how bad does it have to be for him to bench his own son? Like, I'm not sure he will ever either, like, especially with the attitude that he came in with.
If they don't get Rashada, who do they bench him for this year anyway? I don't know that there's another answer on that roster that you go to. They don't really have a guy behind him. So I don't even know if we would know the answer to that until the next year, assuming that, he doesn't declare for the draft, he returns, they bring somebody else that's competent and behind him.
If they're going to do this the Lincoln Riley way, next year would be the class to bring somebody in. Shador Sanders is going to be a third-year player. So he's going to play 2023. I don't think he's declaring for the 2024 NFL draft. So he's going to play in 2024 and then declare for the 2025 NFL draft. And let's remember this. He hasn't had a full recruiting cycle at Colorado. He will have that next recruiting cycle. So maybe he could get one of these class of 2024 quarterbacks there to come to Colorado.
However you're invested in sports, from betting to fantasy, collectibles, and more, join our community on Bettor Sports Network. Now back to the 2023 NFL Draft BettorCast on Fantasy Alarm and Bettor Sports Network.
Welcome back in, everybody. John and Pembrey here. Kev Tompkins, Austin Nace, and Lisa Ann breaking down the NFL Draft 2023 draft here going on. When we went to break, we had the Giants on the board. That pick came in. Cornerback Deonte Banks now going to the Giants here, and Jacksonville making another trade. Buffalo hopping up now on the clock at pick 25. Austin, welcome into the show, man. Give me your reaction to Banks going to the Giants.
Yeah, bring it down the home stretch here. There's that one corner every year that kind of rises through the process. They probably ran really well at the combine. And everyone kind of goes back and looks at their tape again and gets a second look. And I think Banks is that guy this year, kind of the developmental guy that you're hoping in a couple of years turns into that shutdown type corner with that 4.35 40. 42-inch vert. I mean, all the skills are there. He had that really big game against Ohio State last year, and I think that's kind of what's propelled him to this point. Not saying he's a bad player, just saying, those are kind of the factors that have really weighed in to get him to this point. So I think he's an interesting player here. A little surprised they moved up for him, but overall, I mean, he could be a top 5-7 corner within the next couple of years with his physical traits.
Yeah, moving up just the one pick to make that move too. So they must have had some ear, right, to who was maybe trying to move up ahead of there. Lisa, thoughts on Banks going to the Giants?
I think the Giants are doing what they can right now to get their defense going, protect Daniel Jones. The Giants having a little bit of a situation with Saquon. That's probably not making them feel good, but they really wanted this pick to move up, and Jacksonville really doesn't care about this pick moving it twice.
Yeah, for sure. And Buffalo now again on the clock. It looks like that pick is going to be coming in here. So, Kev, thoughts here on the Giants addressing the defensive side of the ball, and where do you think Buffalo's going now that they're moving up as well?
Yeah, as far as the Giants, I mean, that's something that they definitely needed to address on their corner. They have a Dory Jackson right now and not much else otherwise. So certainly a nice pick there. Buffalo, certainly pretty much anywhere on the defensive side. But never rule out Buffalo to kind of go up and get their guy, regardless of position. So it'll be very interesting to see. And I did see it. I'm not going to say it. Yeah.
So you got the secrets already. You're just not telling everybody what's
I
going on.
literally just saw it as I was clicking over. So
I hear you there. Lisa, what do you think Buffalo's looking to do here moving up?
Same defense. That's really that's their biggest need right now. I mean, there's not a running back they're going to take right here, so defense would be the play.
Yeah, Austin, you feeling the same way?
I don't know. There were some rumors leading up to the draft that they really like Josh Downs. I think this might be slightly early for him, but I don't know that he makes it to their next pick either. So, one of those type of deals where maybe you just kind of grab your guy and hope for the best. So that could be my pick here. Other than that, yeah, I think anywhere on the defensive side of the ball. And I think you guys were talking Joey Porter Jr. I'm a big Joey Porter Jr. guy. I'm surprised that he's fallen this far.
Yep.
Yeah, that was another guy that had a pretty wide range, but you would have saw it somewhere in the teens. You would have seen him go with some of the other cornerbacks that have come off the board. And yet here he is still kind of floating around there. It'd be interesting to see if maybe a team trades back into the first round. Again, we only got a couple of picks. It feels like this draft has been going fairly quickly this year compared to some of the other ones. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but we'll see if Porter comes in. It looks like that pick is about to be made here momentarily with the Buffalo Bills. So when we land that one, we will see if we can bring in Johnny here, see what his thoughts are with Buffalo looking to move up. Any idea where they may be looking ahead?
They have two needs, corner and receiver. I think ultimately here, the cornerback play, again, in a division here where you have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. You have Garrett Wilson now, who's got Aaron Rodgers throwing him the rock. And the Patriots don't really have anybody, but you have to be able to defend that way. And, the Bills they're not a shoo-in for the AFC East anymore, but what they are, they're still in mind having to compete with the Kansas City Chiefs. So, even though that they lost Tyreek Hill, Kansas City still won the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes still found guys throwing the ball. So the fact is, the Buffalo Bills need somebody to contain these weapons in the AFC. And even a team like the Bengals, who have
the Bengals for sure too, right?
Two studs. Okay. If they don't go corner, which I do like Joey Porter Jr. here. I don't think you can go wrong with that pick. But they need a wide receiver too, man. The fantasy guys that were trying to push Gabe Davis as a steal in the fantasy drafts. I mean, how do you look now? Gabe Davis is terrible. More than a wide receiver 3. I think
had a good playoff game though.
So one good playoff game that propelled a season of disappointment. The biggest highlight from him was Week 1 when he showed out in the Peaky Blinders cleats. Can't hate on those. Those are absolutely gasolina, like Daddy Yankee would say. But I think here you grab one of the Tennessee guys at wide receiver. If you don't go get Dalton Kincaid.
There it is right there. Dalton Kincaid going to the Buffalo Bills. First tight end off the board out of Utah. Austin, thoughts on Bills going with a tight end here?
I'm a little surprised that he was the first tight end, even though we kind of heard some smoke or saw some smoke over the past couple of weeks that this might be the case. Coming out of Utah here, he couldn't really test it all during the process because of that back injury. I think that's for us that don't aren't doctors and don't get to look at him, obviously concerning. The Bills seem to not be that worried about it, or they probably wouldn't have taken him here. We do some athletic comp stuff over at C2C. He doesn't have the best athletic comps, so I'm a little surprised. He does not profile to me as like a round 1 tight end. I'm not sure that this is a guy that you're featuring in an offense. I don't know that I love this pick. He feels like maybe a day 2 guy to me personally, but I know there was just so much buzz with him as a round 1 guy, and I don't know that this could be, considered shocking.
Yeah, for sure. Kev, thoughts on Kincaid? You got to be formulating a thought on it since you saw the leak there a little bit ago.
Yeah, it makes me think that maybe Khalil Shakir isn't as ticketed for the slot as we all thought when Isaiah McKenzie moved on. So that could be interesting how they deploy him. But if you're thinking like a guy that, in Dynasty, this kind of hurts unless you want to see how they're going to deploy him with Dawson Knox too. But you can't really grab him in redraft. Even best ball, he's like a last 2-3 round kind of guy. Kind of perplexing, given the makeup. But they could probably use that wide receiver more than a tight end.
We've seen a lot of mocks with Mayer going to Dallas. Dallas is on the clock here. Do you think they go ahead and attack the tight end position here, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense. I mean, I think Kincaid would have been a much better pick to Dallas than
Agreed.
Buffalo. I'm kind of scratching my head. I mean, you go offensive pass catcher, and it's not a wide receiver, a position you desperately needed. I mean, they got very little pass production outside of Stephon Diggs, the last couple of years. So that would have been where I went, and I think Kincaid would have been the guy to fit for Dallas. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, I think you need another tight end. I'd like to see them get another wide receiver, if I'm being honest, despite the fact that they have a defensive need, because I'm not sold on Michael Gallup coming back here. I think the guy is talented, but dealing with the injuries, I think you need a certainty behind CeeDee Lamb. You move on from Zeke Elliott. Now Tony Pollard's the feature. The line is still a little bit of a concern, but ultimately here, I'm looking at probably wide receiver, or maybe you go back to corner if you're Dallas here, because again, you're playing in a division where there's a lot of good receivers with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Terry McLaurin, etc.
Yeah, ESPN flashing into Michael Mayer. No hugs and handshakes yet at his home, so doesn't seem like he's gotten the phone call. Austin, where do you think Dallas would be looking to target here?
Yeah, I think Mayer's a reasonable spot. I wouldn't hate just tapping somewhere on the defense as well. I mean, we've seen that defense start to improve a little bit. Obviously, bringing in Micah Parsons there to kind of headline that group. You've got some decent corners as well. But I think maybe adding a guy like Branch to that group, that might be another direction they could go if they're looking on that side of the ball. And of course, I guess at this point we just have to say Joey Porter Jr. I think
right?
The producer's saying we're obligated on every pick.
Yeah,
now,
contractually obligated.
So Joey Porter Jr. Yeah, I mean, he's got to be picked at some point.
Lisa, Dallas on the clock here. Where do the Cowboys go?
Man, I would have loved to see us get Dalton. We definitely need the tight end. That's definitely a position. But I'm with Johnny. Like, Michael Gallup's just so inconsistent. He's frustrating to watch, and then injuries are a problem as well. So we also need a wide receiver. We also need some defense. We're going to have to pick up another running back as well. Like, the Cowboys are going to rely way too much on Dak and CeeDee Lamb if they don't make these offensive moves. But we still do need some defense as well. Bringing in Brandon Cooks, not so exciting, but he's there. He's had some great seasons. I can't judge him by playing for the Texans. Right. Ronald Jones hopefully doesn't even make the 52-man roster. I mean, that was like the most upsetting. It was like one day there's no more Zeke, and then like 2 days later, we got Ronald Jones. I'm like, why? Like, what was the point of that? There's going to be so many better running backs out there from other teams. So many.
Yeah, the free agent list of running backs are still out there. It's surprising some of these names are still haven't found homes. It'll be pretty interesting to see if maybe after the draft they land on one of them. The offensive line for me has always been, it feels like a problem for Dallas. They have great offensive line talent, but they always get hurt. And then you go watch them on primetime TV and they're like, well, they're down 2 guards. They shifted this guy from center to here. And that's been seemingly one of the reasons that their offense sometimes struggles a bit. So I wouldn't hate if they were to kind of eventually, address some depth there at the offensive line, but still a minute to go on the clock here for them. Kev, what are your thoughts on Dallas's pick here?
Yeah, I mean, Brian Branch just sticks out to me like a sore thumb for a guy that should be available. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they were trying to shop the pick too after Buffalo took Kincaid. That just seemed like a ready-made fit for them. And then it's like when you're trying to spite the other guy that's behind you in a fantasy draft, take Kincaid. So wouldn't surprise me if that was something that they entertained, but maybe they just make the pick. And certainly corners, safety as well.
Yeah, we got a bunch of handshakes and hugs going on in the Cowboys war room, so that pick is in. I'm sure we'll have it momentarily here. Looking back at the last couple of picks here, anything surprising to you, Austin? Again, you just kind of recently joining us here. And what is kind of your out there selection so far of the draft?
I mean, I think the Kincaid one just sticks out like a sore thumb if we're just talking about the last handful of picks or so. I'm a little surprised that the wide receiver run happened where it did, and we haven't quite gone back to offensive line yet. I guess teams are kind of thinking maybe early second could be the sweet spot for some of these, especially interior guys. But I would expect maybe over the next couple of picks to see some of those guys start coming off the board. A guy like DeWand Jones coming out of Ohio State, a big tackle, Anton Harrison, some of these guys that are still just sticking around waiting.
Yeah, 100% there. So waiting to see when this pick kind of comes in. As we get down into these later selections, the talent pool of players, they kind of all are ranking similarly. You hear that a lot about this draft, especially once you got off the first half. A lot of these players kind of projected in the same range. So team needs defense. We'll see exactly where Dallas goes. We saw Jacksonville already trade back a couple of times, so they hang on to pick 27, and we'll see kind of where they're at. Kev, when it comes to sort of the more recent picks here, what is a more surprising selection for you?
Yeah, it would probably be
the Kincaid one.
Yeah, I mean that I'm scrolling through to try to see if there's anything that really bugs me, and it's just Kincaid for me. Just given, he could play slot, and Andrew Cooper talking about they just drafted a slot receiver that we could start at tight end in fantasy, referring to Kincaid. So for fantasy purposes, that could certainly be fruitful, but it's just it's a head scratcher.
Yeah, we got the little bell there. I think we got a pick coming in here. We got Mazi Smith, defensive tackle from Michigan. Lisa, Dallas went defense.
Yep, and that's the first move. I like it a lot. I think this is the weakness that they knew they had, but I do believe if the tight end was still there, they would have gone there. But defense, we have that need, so that's a good fit.
Awesome. Thoughts on the pick?
Yeah, just a big, immovable guy for the heart of that defensive line. Keep some of those linebackers clean. Micah Parsons, specifically, is a guy that, if you can kind of give him rushing with some steam, he's a tough guy to stop there. I was hoping, I'm a Steelers guy, I was hoping maybe he'd fall to that 32nd pick there and we could grab him. But I think he's going to really disrupt some things, occupy multiple offensive linemen, just make things easier for the rest of his teammates. I don't know if he'll ever be a gaudy stats guy per se, but he does have some athletic ability. You can see on that play there. Just that swim move real quick, beating that guard. So I think he does have some of that ability. So maybe you hope that he can develop into something a little more. At worst, you've got a guy that's pretty good run stopper and just overall gonna give offensive line some problems there.
Yeah, let's bring Johnny in here, get his thoughts on what the Cowboys just did with their selection.
Yeah, defense, we just talked about it. If they couldn't get Kincaid, the receiver was on the table if they want to go one of the guys from Tennessee. But ultimately, this side of the ball was the correct side, in my opinion, because, we just talked about what kind of division that they're in. And, even on the running back front, you got Saquon Barkley. You have now Rashad Penny in Philly, who – that dude's a stud when he's healthy. That kid has just been racking up numbers, but unfortunately a bad knee injury last year kind of set him back. And even the Commanders are gonna get back to running the rock. And this is a good pick. You have to shore up that defensive line. And you got DeMarcus Lawrence, who that guy can rack up double-digit sacks, especially with Micah Parsons commanding so much attention. And Parsons, it's weird because Dallas, what they did a lot last year, they lined him up at off-ball linebacker. They didn't always rush him as a passer. They tried to utilize him in a lot of different roles. So getting another body on that D-line that I think Austin said it, that's just immovable.
Yeah.
That's important because that frees up Parsons to continue to do more things. This guy can eat double teams, and that just would make this pass rush and this defense a lot better. And we've been talking about it. You build a strong defense from the inside out. Mazi Smith is certainly a guy like that is more than capable of doing so.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. That defense, especially with Micah Parsons, the way he can move around. Then you mentioned, the other offenses that are in that division having to deal with Jalen Hurts and his mobility. You get a guy that can immediately push an offensive line back into him and kind of cause a little bit of disruption there in their running attack. And allows and frees up Parsons maybe to get to that level there behind the offensive line to make some plays for sure. We got Jacksonville on the clock here. That pick is in. They moved back a few times. Awesome. What do you think we should be looking for Jacksonville here?
Yeah, I think a DB would be interesting here. A guy like Branch. I'm not going to say Porter Jr. anymore. I'm actually really interested. I haven't heard anybody really talking about Kelly Ringo, and I don't think he's a round one guy, even though he kind of started the process up there because of his athletic gifts. But he's a really interesting guy that some team maybe falls in love with and says, we can kind of get the best out of this guy just because of how much of an athletic freak he is.
Yeah, Kev, thoughts on Jacksonville here on the clock?
Yeah, it just seems to go to the same two guys. You could throw Brian Branch in there too. He's certainly a guy that can play, certainly at at linebacker too. He's got pretty. He's very versatile in where you can line him up. So definitely think Jacksonville can certainly use guys like that down into the front seven too, and then can play back too. So definitely like Brian Branch. Kind of surprised by the slide a little bit, but yeah, I guess I'll say it.
I mean,
I'm
they
contractually obligated. Joey Porter.
Yeah, I said they ranked 30th in DVOA against the pass last year. So I mean, Joey Porter, go get a cornerback. The man should have been taken maybe 10 or so picks ago, and he's still kind of floating around there. So maybe they go ahead and finally kind of readdress their defense. Their offense doesn't really need any work at this point, right? I mean, they're getting Calvin Ridley, ATN. You saw Trevor Lawrence take that next step. They paid Christian Kirk. So, fixing up that defense and maybe get back to the Saxonville days of old will, really push them forward to being an even bigger contender in the AFC. Johnny, thoughts here on Jacksonville on the clock and what they may be doing?
I mean, Jacksonville looks fantastic, dude. They really do. I think this is a team that is just continue to be built for success for the next 4 or 5 years or so. The Ridley acquisition was just gigantic, dude. That guy might be a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy this year. I mean, I projected him to be the number 1 last year before he, had his whole issues. But ultimately, the defense is where they need to improve. There's a lot of times where they just let up too many big games and, they kind of got bailed out by the offense. Up front makes the most sense for me. I would imagine Darius Williams has a big year this year. Rayshon Jenkins has a strong safety. He had a pretty good year at some big moments, especially against that Dallas game in the comeback. So with the strong linebacking core, I think they could afford to go get a pass rusher here to go along with Josh Allen, who's an absolute stud. But if they want to get a corner to go along with Darius Williams and really certify that secondary, I wouldn't hate it. So a Joey Porter or somebody up front, to rush the passer. And I think this Jacksonville roster is absolutely humming right now.
Yeah, this pick is in. So while we wait for it to be announced, got to let everybody know some cool things we got going on here at the Bettor Sports Network and Fantasy Alarm. Best ball fantasy football season starts immediately after the NFL draft on Fantasy Alarm and the Bettor Sports Network. Get expert advice to draft winning teams, including strategies, rookie profiles, player rankings, and average draft position data, and more. Get in the huddle and start drafting best ball teams on Underdog. You get a deposit match up to $100. You go to fantasyalarm.com/underdog using promo code FANTASYALARM. So go ahead, check that out. I know Best Ball Mania is going to be released shortly. I know we'll be doing plenty of live streams and drafting over at Fantasy Alarm here and at the Bettor Sports Network as well, getting everybody kind of ready for that fantasy football season. It's crazy to think that we're already here, right? Once the NFL draft is over, we dive full on in to the regular season of fantasy football here. So that bell there looks like we got a pick. Anton Harrison, offensive tackle from Oklahoma, securing the offensive line here now for Jacksonville there. Austin, thoughts on the offensive tackle selection?
Yeah, he was starting to get some late round 1 buzz here as the offseason went on. So I guess it's not too surprising of a pick there for them. I beef up the offensive line. Get ETN going a little bit more here. Keep protecting your franchise guy. Trevor Lawrence looks like he's going to be the guy there for the next 10, 15 years. So give him a little more time. He was running around a little bit at times last year. Harrison, I mean, I think he's a pretty good mover. I wouldn't say that he's necessarily elite there. But you can see here, some of these clips, pretty good feet, pretty good functional strength, probably a guy that I think can probably start day 1, but maybe doesn't realize everything he can do until maybe year 3, year 4, a couple years down the line.
Yeah, get in that NFL strength program, right? And all of a sudden really starts to use that leverage there. Kev, offensive line for Jacksonville here. Obviously not as sexy as a skill position player when we're talking fantasy football, but does it make you feel any better about the offense there as they add on a tackle?
Absolutely. Commitment to Trevor Lawrence and being able to protect him. That's number one. I mean, guy's 315 pounds and moves like a guy that's probably 280, 290. So, I mean, what's wrong with getting a bookend tackle that you can maybe either put out on the left side or right side? Definitely like it. We don't talk enough about, these tackles and guards and offensive linemen just as a whole when you're talking about, the guys like Travis Etienne and obviously Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk. It's all just net positives.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence sacked 27 times last year. So, Johnny, what are your thoughts here on this?
Yeah, you know what? This wasn't defense like I thought it might be, but in the back of my head when I was looking at it, I forgot Cam Robinson not only has a knee injury, but he got popped for a suspension for PED. So I think that's probably 6 games. So I think ultimately here, to continue shoring up that offensive line, this is a strong pick. You can never have enough offensive linemen. We've learned that, throughout the years of watching football. So this is a strong pick. It's not sexy. Drafting a lineman it never is, but it's a necessity. And Trevor Lawrence has to stay more upright, and I think he's just going to continue to soar. So this, at least for the moment, bides some time while Cam Robinson works his way back from an injury and a suspension. And I think this is a good problem to have ultimately if you're Jacksonville.
Yeah, can't have enough offensive line depth. I think I've said that 10 times here so far tonight. Let's go back to Lisa here. Bengals pick on the clock, pick 28. That pick is in. Cincinnati, we know, loaded on the offensive side of the football here. Got a little better on the offensive line last year. Lisa, what are your thoughts on the Bengals here and what they may do at pick 28?
Yeah, I think the Bengals really need to think about protecting Joe Burrow as well. So I think you're going to go. I think they're going to go maybe. I'm getting it before you guys because I'm watching it on the NFL Network and you're all watching it on ESPN. So like it's so hard for me to just keep it, but I will keep it. Yes, I think that they're going to protect Joe Burrow.
Okay. Well, we do have that bell there, so we got to pick in right now. I'll see exactly what that selection was that Lisa was alluding to. Miles Murphy, defensive end, Clemson. Lisa, you saw it first. What are your thoughts there, them going defense?
I think defense is a good move for them as well. I mean, look, they've got a lot of pieces. They might be making a move from Mixon as well. We know this, but this is a good move for them to not have to put so much pressure on Joe Burrow to be playing from behind. Another good season for them in their new facility as well.
Yeah, Austin, go defense here for Cincinnati.
Yeah, he's I think he's probably better in the 4-man front, and that's what that Cincinnati runs there. So obviously it makes sense from there. They've got Hendrickson, and then Hubbard, who isn't. I mean, he's kind of an edge, but he's almost more of a 3-4 guy there. So it makes sense to kind of probably maybe be a rotational piece with Hendrickson. Maybe a future replacement, or maybe they run some additional packages with some additional pass rushers on the field. They had probably, I would say, a disappointing Clemson career. Him and Bryce both. They were both supposed to be, real superstars there, take him to a national championship. Never really happened, but he was still pretty productive, got a pretty good athletic profile overall. So I think this is, I don't know that he's ever a star, but I think this is a pretty good, safe pick ultimately for the Bengals.
Yeah, definitely could probably use some help. Again, we talked about the teams that they're trying to compete against, the offenses that they're going to be eventually competing against as they go deeper into the playoffs. You get somebody that can maybe get after the quarterback, whether it be Mahomes or Allen, or if they get back to the Super Bowl, the teams that could be on that side. Never hurts to go defense there. Kev, thoughts on the Bengals here addressing their defense?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to stop the Chiefs and the Bills of the world and Dolphins, like, you need guys to be able to get after the quarterback. So definitely like the move to get it defensive end there. So yeah, I mean, like I said, get after Josh Allen, get after Patrick Mahomes, get after Tua. No complaints at all.
Right. Saints on the clock here. Obviously, this is a little bit of a rebuild for them. Getting Derek Carr now at quarterback. We saw them. They addressed their offense last year with Olave in the draft. Maybe we'll have a healthy Michael Thomas. We'll see, right? Never know with him here. Where do you think that they're looking to go maybe with this pick here, Lisa?
Let me look right here. I'm so sorry. I just scooted over to another thing. Okay, so we know they could definitely use a tight end for sure, but we definitely know that they need defense as well. The Saints need to do some work there. So I'm going to go with defense here for the Saints.
Yeah, Austin, feeling the same?
I don't think any position would really surprise me here, except for probably quarterback, with going out and getting Derek Carr this offseason. They have holes everywhere. Like you said, this is a pretty big rebuild. They think they probably have their wide receiver 1 at this point. the defensive line, Cameron Jordan, he's kind of aging out. Could they be looking for a possible replacement for him over the next couple of years? Maybe. I don't know if Nolan Smith quite fits what their defense is, but he's a guy that's been sliding, and we haven't really heard much about him over the past few picks. So he could be an interesting guy. Some of these other edge guys that are kind of fringy first rounders could potentially go in here. And then, obviously we'll keep going back to Brian Branch. Is the 40 holding him back? He did not run particularly well. Maybe that's why he's sliding a little bit. And then still some interesting corners on the board, I think, as well.
I got to go to the obligatory Joey Porter mention there as we go to pick 30 here. Johnny, thoughts on what we just saw? The Bengals do going Miles Murphy, and then now we have the Saints on the clock.
Yeah, ultimately, I think that was a good pick for Cincinnati. They have invested in Joe Burrow substantially over the last couple of years. And, their defense has kind of slowly been getting better. And you just alluded to it. Like, they're in an AFC that is loaded with aerial attack. And you need a guy at closing time can come on and get after the quarterback. And, that's the kind of guy they got with Miles Murphy. So that's a guy that's motor never stops. And I think that's a pretty good pick for Cincinnati, and just continue building that defense, because ultimately we know what the offense is going to do. They're going to ball out every single Sunday with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and company. So I really like Cincinnati's pick there going defense.
Yeah, we got about 3 minutes to go on the clock here for the Saints. Johnny, what are your thoughts? What's your perfect landing spot here for New Orleans?
I think ultimately, when you're looking at New Orleans, they got to get back to what they used to do best, defense. Their defense still has some pieces. You got Cam Jordan, who has been one of the most unsung pass rushers for the last probably 10 years. They have some guys, but they are getting a little bit older. I would like to see them ultimately go back to getting defense, because that is the priority. Offensively, they flashed. I mean, you still got Alvin Kamara. You got Chris Olave, who was awesome last year despite the carousel at QB. I think they're still high on Adam Troutman. I mean, this is a guy with better quarterback play that might be able to do something in fantasy at a shallow position, but definitely want to see them go defense here. Wouldn't hate to see it at edge rusher. But then again, I mean, you could just get right back up the middle, because that's typically what has worked for them in the past, shutting teams down in the run, as they have typically been one of the better run-stopping teams in the last 5 years.
Yeah, last year, 17th in DVOA against the run, 6th DVOA against the pass. I agree with you. They were one of the teams that when it came to DFS or fantasy, if you saw your running back going up against the Saints, you're like, I'll go a different direction if I could here. Pick is in. We'll obviously wait for the official announcement here to see where we go. Obviously, the Miami Dolphins don't have a first-round pick this year, so we got only a couple of picks left in the draft here tonight. So it will be interesting to see. We got Philly and KC to close out the show. While we wait for that official pick to come in, we just want to go ahead and remind everybody that Fantasy Alarm has all of the fantasy football and betting content you need for the upcoming NFL season, featuring best ball strategies, rookie scouting reports, rankings, projections, a premium Discord chat, and more. For a limited time, you can get the complete NFL package, along with all of our DFS content for all sports at an additional 20% off the already discounted annual price. You go to using promo code NFL Draft. Go to fantasyalarm.com/all-pro. Click on the annual package there, promo code NFL Draft. You get a 7-day free trial right now, so you got to go ahead, check all of that out, join up, sign up at Fantasy Alarm, take advantage of everything you got going on. Pick in for the Saints here, Brian Bryce, defensive tackle out of Clemson. Austin, they went defense here, as we kind of assumed they would.
Yeah, I'm really happy for him, a guy that had overcome a lot of just terrible things over the past couple of years. He's been injured. His sister passed away last year. I mean, it's been a really, really hard year or two for him. So congrats to him for getting picked here. Overall, a bit of a hybrid defensive tackle. He can do a little bit of everything, but I don't know that he's elite in any regard. And that's that disappointing Clemson career kind of probably why he fell to this point as the top high schooler in his class coming out. But you can see he's pretty darn athletic overall. When he's healthy, that first step for an interior lineman is pretty dang dangerous. He gets upfield in a hurry. So I do think if you put him next to a guy like Cam Jordan, I think they both probably make each other's lives a little bit easier. Probably never a guy that's getting you, 10, 12 sacks a game, but maybe a season, but maybe a 6 to 8 sack guy with some decent run support coming in here. And you're feeling pretty good about this pick overall if you're the Saints.
Johnny, you were talking about getting interior defensive line there. Cameron Jordan, getting someone next to him. Happy with the selection of this one?
Yeah, I think this is pretty good. This is kind of rare, though, right? I mean, you got a defensive tackle who's 6'6", 300 pounds. That's even bigger than I would think for a defensive tackle. But, I mean, at the plus side, you get a guy who's going to get those arms up in the passing lane. That's going to make quarterbacks really uncomfortable. But, yeah, this is a good selection, man. It's not a sexy pick by any stretch of the imagination. He's probably not going to be the next Aaron Donald. I don't think he'd win a Defensive Player of the Year award in his career. But this is somebody that's going to do the dirty work and allow Cam Jordan to run free and continue to wreak havoc and just rack up 12-plus sacks. And, this is one of those things that was a necessity for New Orleans. And, this is, I think, overall a pretty strong pick.
And if you look at the division again, right? I mean, obviously Tom Brady's not in Tampa Bay anymore. The Saints, if they can kind of build back up that defense there, not a ton of divisional competition really for them. Carolina obviously made the big splash, but they're going to have a rookie quarterback. Atlanta doesn't really have a quarterback, but they went and got, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, they got Kyle Pitts there. But, it seems like from a quarterback standpoint, the Saints are in the best position in that conference there, division rather, and if they can build up that defense, give them an edge. Kev, thoughts on what the Saints just did with their selection?
Yeah, they lost David Onyemata, so I mean, getting Brzee to plug in there. I mean, he's pretty athletic for a guy his size. Certainly, yeah. Like Johnny said, you don't see 6'6", 300-pound defensive tackles in this day and age. So certainly a size outlier there. But yeah, definitely something they needed big time to get a defensive tackle in there.
Eagles on the clock. They obviously picked earlier. They got Jalen Carter at 9. And now they draft once again here at 30. Maybe thought maybe they would be a guy interested in a running back. Didn't end up landing one there. Gibbs went way early. Didn't get Bijan Robinson. Where do we think the Eagles go with their second selection in the first round there, Austin?
Yeah, I'm not watching a stream along with this, so it seems like this spot or Kansas City with the last pick are obvious trade down spots if someone wants to try to come up here and maybe snag one of those quarterbacks that have fallen at this point. Sure. Levis obviously, and then Hooker as well, who was getting some late first round buzz. So we'll see if that's the case. But I think if they stay with this pick again, I think they're so set pretty much everywhere that you can really take any position here and probably be happy with it. It's probably not a guy that you're expecting to step in day one and be a major impact guy for you. So I think honestly, they've been hitting these Georgia guys in the front seven so much the past year or two. Nolan Smith actually makes a lot of sense for them to me, as more kind of a hybridish kind of guy on the perimeter.
Johnny, what are you thinking about Philadelphia here?
Yeah, you know what? I think you hit the nail on the head that they could take pretty much any position. I probably would like to see them take another running back. Rashad Penny, as good as he is, I think they could use somebody that's really, not exactly Kenny Walker because, guys like him don't grow on trees, but somebody that could step in and shoulder their workload should Penny miss some time. That's an area of concern in terms of depth, but I'd like to see them probably go defense. Ultimately, they need a safety. I think Blankenship's not really a long-term answer. They get Darius Slay back on a re-sign. They're really building a strong front seven. So I probably would say safety is the next one. But again, you can't go wrong on the defensive line because this team is just going to continue to punish their NFC East opponents and be, again, the favorite to go back to the Super Bowl because with this defense – playing the way they are with Jalen Hurts and the offense running point, this is really the way to go for Philadelphia.
Yeah, let's bring back in Lisa Ann here, see what she thinks here with the Eagles making their second selection, potentially in the first round. Looks like their GM coach is on the phone, so looks like they're going to be making this pick. What are your thoughts on where they go?
Yeah, I like what you said right there. This is truly a luxury pick. Running back would make sense, as Johnny said, for sure, but you could never go wrong adding another piece to that defense. They did. Fletcher Cox coming back is a surprise. Thought before the end of the season he may retire, coming back for one more year, but the Eagles are stacked right now, but their weakest link to me is run defense and a running back.
Our guy Coop has just been blowing up the chat with some tight end propaganda here. Just nothing but needing someone to trade up and get a tight end. He wants the Dolphins to trade up into this first round and take a tight end there. Nick Coop never restless there with his tight end takes. Kev, thoughts here on the Eagles?
Yeah, luxury pick. I mean, you could certainly take interior offensive lineman as well. They could certainly just restock for the future. Steve Avila makes sense. Nolan Smith makes sense. They could. We've already said it. We've beat it to death. Take anybody, and that's the Eagles don't need much.
Right. They really don't. Like I said, and it's why I said it, but you guys kind of all agreed. The luxury pick sort of just kind of fits the bill there. That pick is in. We'll give it a moment here while they figure out how they're going to go about and announce it. We got obviously some more promos going on here at the Bettor Sports Network. Again, you're watching now us on the BettorCast here. Join us on the Bettor Sports Network app for a complete draft experience with BettorCast. Play our live NFL draft questions and answer game while you follow all the picks and chat with fans. You compete today. If you're listening now, you've been doing it all night for that one-on-one Anthony Richardson augmented reality card. But you got to download the free Bettor Sports Network app for everybody. Can't beat free. You see the augmented one-on-one Anthony Richardson card right there on the side. It's pretty crazy. You scan it. You can scan that code there and get an idea of what that card's going to look like. It's pretty interesting to see how that one ends up getting made here. So still kind of waiting for the Eagles to pop in, see what they end up doing here. Then we got KC to kind of close out the first round. Lisa, where do you think KC would go with their selection?
KC could use some help on the defensive end as well. So I'd be looking for KC to go defense. We know they don't need a quarterback. We know they don't need a tight end. Never bad to have a backup, but that's not what they're going to be doing. I think they're going to go defense there. That's where we've seen them suffer. And luckily, Mahomes can play from a deficit no matter what and bring them back. But that's not what he always wants to be doing, right? Yeah. Defense there. And that's a need for them, really.
I agree with you there. Austin, thoughts on KC? It looks actually Goodell's making the pick right now, so we'll have this momentarily. They're introducing a few people up on the stands here.
I love that they're bringing YouTube creators in. I'm so proud of the NFL for jumping on this. Dude Perfect's very popular, so that's going to bring in a whole different demographic.
Nice. Yeah, so we'll make this pick here, hopefully momentarily, and get an idea of where they're going with what's going on. Donna Kelsey and Dude Perfect, as Lisa said, up there talking about it. They're really dragging this along.
They are.
Really, just make the pick.
It's way past my bedtime.
The collab we didn't know we needed.
Right? The collab we didn't know we needed here.
We could have used it earlier, but not now. Don't drag it on now.
Well, I said earlier, it felt like this draft was moving quicker. Producer in chat there making a great point. They got the block. They paid for it till midnight, so they got to make sure that they go ahead and fill that here. They're flipping coins on the stage for those of you guys out there watching it.
I mean, they have a concert going on there as soon as this is over. Fallout Boy, I think, is tonight. Is that right, Fallout Boy? There's a concert tonight. There's a concert every night after the draft.
That's pretty fun. Well, we got the pick here. Eagles select Nolan Smith, linebacker.
How many Georgia guys do they need?
I mean, great defense, right? So why not just stack up and bulk what you already have? Again, talked about it as a luxury pick. Austin, thoughts on the linebacker selection here?
Yeah, worse places to keep dipping into to stack up your defense than that Georgia Bulldogs defense has basically dragged them kicking and screaming to 2 consecutive national championships here. Look, I think I don't know that Nolan Smith is necessarily a real first round guy. I think he is a guy that has benefited a little bit from playing with some of these just absolute monster defensive linemen that they have. But guess who he gets to reunite with here? I mean, those same monsters that have pretty much helped him produce over the past couple of years. He's not a flashy guy. I don't know that he has great bend. I don't know that he has great power, but he has an excellent motor. And I think if you kind of just, have these guys occupying offensive linemen, he'll get through and he'll make a play. So I think this is interesting for the Eagles, a luxury pick, but I think definitely they could use some extra edge guys. And I think he fits what they want probably to a T.
Yeah, let's get Johnny in here. Nolan Smith, linebacker out of Georgia, going to the Philadelphia Eagles with their second selection.
Yeah, we just talked about it. I mean, this is a can't go wrong pick. I mean, you just can never have enough defensive guys, especially in the front seven. I mean, they're just going to be so impossible to deal with. And I think, the amount of Georgia guys they have, it sets them well up for the future. It's a fresh body. It's a guy that could get into the mix, maybe wreak some havoc. And you never know what happens further down the season when you need a guy to step up. And I just think this is a great pick. And, I think maybe the only real weakness in their secondary is replacing Reed Blankenship for a reliable starter.
Sure, and that's something that obviously they can continue to address. The idea of getting a guy like Nolan Smith here and the defensive line that they have already, those guys occupy bodies, they open up lanes, and you can bring him in on third down and just get after the quarterback there. Kev, what are your thoughts here? Nolan Smith out of Georgia.
I mean, the dude ran a 4.39 40. You pair him back with Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Jalen Carter, now Nolan Smith. Like, embarrassment of riches for Howie Roseman here. Job well done. They won the draft for me tonight.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they've been impressive with their rebuild, investing in the offensive side of the ball around Jalen Hurts last year, and in the year before that, Devonta Smith, AJ Brown, and now just an absolute monster defense in a division that shaky, right? I mean, the Giants obviously on the come up a little bit, but there's still a lot of questions really around Daniel Jones. We know what the Commanders aren't. Dallas certainly finds themselves always underachieving, and this is feels like it's set for the Eagles to just dominate now this NFC East for some time. We're watching the Super Bowl trophies get brought on stage here for the Kansas City Chiefs about 3 minutes ago with this one. Austin, if we're looking at KC, what are the needs that they got to go fulfill here?
Yeah, I just want to tag in one more point on that Eagles pick. Nolan Smith, I don't think they're expecting him to come in and be a leader, immediately as a rookie, but he is very much a guy that's a high character guy in the locker room. And I think surrounding Jalen Carter with some of these guys that he's familiar with as a guy that, maybe teams are a little worried about, and his former captain, I think that goes a long way to kind of corralling him as well. So I think that move makes sense on a lot of levels.
Yeah. Again, it's the makeup of that team, the defense, and how they can, like you mentioned, they don't need to go in and rely on him right away. He's not expected to come in and be that guy because that defense is already set as it is. But if they can put him in spots to be successful, build that confidence, I mean, it's just going to do wonders for him here. So KC still 2:20 left on the clock. Johnny, thoughts on where KC may be making a move here?
Two positions they really need. They need a wide receiver to replace Tyreek Hill, and they need a pass rusher to replace Frank Clark. So for me, I mean, I don't think you go wrong with either. They're both necessities, and whichever order you take, I think there's going to be wide receivers tomorrow that you could grab. But I mean, I would like to see maybe a Jalen Hyatt with Patrick Mahomes. Yep. I think fantasy, that would be awesome. And Mahomes got it done with a bunch of guys that are one-trick ponies. They're okay. Like an MVS, he showed out like we kind of thought he would. Juju had his moments. Kadarius Toney had a couple big plays. Sky Moore didn't really do much. I think they need a bona fide number one. Now, it's very rare you're going to find a Tyreek Hill. That's like a once-in-a-generational type player mixed with Andy Reid's play calling and how great Mahomes is. But, a guy like Jalen Hyatt could be the answer to get back to a dominant passing offense that could just hit a home run from anywhere on the field. But then again, you could possibly go grab one of these good wide receivers that would definitely fit the bill and maybe punt and go defensive end here. Either way, I'm cool as long as they go one of those two positions.
Kev, where do you think we're looking at with KC here?
Yeah, Jalen Hyatt sticks out, like speed and ball skills. Be perfect for Patrick Mahomes to at least get over the hump of the also-rans that make up the wide receiver group.
Yeah, well, the pick is in here, so we'll go ahead and see where Kansas City decides to make it. Austin, what are your thoughts on what KC might do here?
Yeah, I think both of those guesses are probably in the ballpark of what they're thinking here. Just one other, they are a team that really can't afford luxury picks, even though they do have some holes. I think a guy that would be interesting is Darnell Washington, a guy that I don't even love him necessarily, but he basically functions as a 6 offensive lineman, so he can help out Mahomes on that side of things. And then can kind of play deputy to Kelsey, or you can kind of move him around a little bit and cause some mismatches there. So it would be, if they don't have a wide receiver here they love, it could still be a guy that functions as a pass catcher, as a weapon for Mahomes in multiple different ways without necessarily having to reach on a guy. Like I think Hyatt probably just on talent alone is probably a little bit of a reach here.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Washington. That guy is such a freak athlete. It feels like just the size and his ability to move. And you saw him when he would catch the football. I talked to Andrew Cooper about him, and he kind of felt the same way you said. He's definitely looks like he could be a guy that can help out blocking. But when they get in the red zone, a guy with that size is just an absolute feels like a mismatch for everybody. We know how Patrick Mahomes likes to get a little crazy with his tight ends when they get down there in the red zone. I don't think they're going to be doing a flip plays to him if they were to draft him, but I mean, certainly a spot that you could see them taking advantage of what they got going on here. So we'll see eventually when this pick does hit where they go, and that would wrap up tonight's draft coverage as well. Again, no Miami Dolphins first round pick here. They lost that given the issues they had this last offseason. Kev, I mean, we've talked a little bit about it this draft already while we wait for this Chiefs pick to come in. Give me your outlook on maybe the most surprising pick overall of tonight's draft.
I mean, it's still Kincaid for me, just based on their team makeup. And like I said before, maybe it throws a little wrench into the thinking that Khalil Shakir is just automatically tagged for that slot role in Buffalo. So depends on how they deploy him with Dawson Knox, but that's kind of a head scratcher for me. But, I'll believe Brandon Bean.
Are you still surprised Kincaid went ahead of Mayer here?
I'm just surprised Mayer didn't go off at all tonight, honestly.
Yeah, I mean,
or hasn't.
Very heavy betting odds on two tight ends going in round one. Didn't end up landing for those who placed that bet there. Johnny, how about you? Given the whole draft as a whole, what draft picks stuck out to you the most?
Kincaid's definitely up there because I thought that there was a lot of other needs. I mean, I think he's good. He could be fantasy relevant early, but I think that pick should have been reserved for Dallas. But if it's not Kincaid, I have a lot of questions about the Zay Flowers to Baltimore, and it's not a knock on Flowers. Like, he's a great receiver who had a great college career with a lot of numbers. I just don't know if it's going to fit this offense. Like, what makes him different than Hollywood Brown? What makes him different than Rashad Bateman? The same prototype that they had. I don't know about that. And just based off the way Baltimore runs their offense, just based on, history, is Zay Flowers going to be another kind of bust? Or is he going to be a guy that is like Hollywood? He has one big year and then they ship him out because they don't want to pay him. I'm not sure about that pick for the Ravens, how he fits.
So what was your take there on Flowers to Baltimore? Did you feel as strongly there?
Really not a fan of it, but as a guy that wasn't a big Zay Flowers fan, I'm not upset by the landing spot because I wasn't necessarily trying to buy him anyway going into the year. So
yeah,
overall,
Felix was very high on Zay Flowers. You had a little bit of an opposite take on him.
I think he does everything okay. I think he's a little soft at the catch point, depending on what's going on. If you can get your hands on him, I think he struggles a little bit. So I'm not his biggest fan. Yeah.
We got the Chiefs pick in here, defensive end from Kansas State. I am not great with names. Felix, was it Anaduke Uzoma? Did I do okay there with the pronunciation? Sound good? Yeah, sounds good to me too here. Defensive end out of Kansas State for the Chiefs, going defensive side of the ball here. Thoughts there, Austin, on Chiefs taking defense?
Yeah, I mean, a fairly athletic guy there, very, very productive in the Big 12 over multiple seasons. You can see him, just that first step off the edge. He is dangerous if you let him get a little bit of steam going. How great is he against the run? I think is going to be an interesting question. I'm not sure that he's a guy that you're necessarily asking to do a ton in that regard. But you can see, the dip there. He just kind of knows where that quarterback always is. And he's one of those guys that all the cliches, just has a nose for the ball. He really, really does. So I think this is a great pick for them. And I think he actually can contribute pretty much right away.
Yeah. Johnny, thoughts here on defensive pick for the Chiefs?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I just talked about it. Defensive end or receiver, I don't think you can go wrong. And Felix was the number one remaining option. This kid is an absolute physical specimen, 6'3", 255. He's athletic. And I think ultimately he's going to play up. His production is going to go up because you have Chris Jones that can command double, triple teams and beat them. And, you got George Karlaftis, who they took last year, who they're expecting to take another step forward. This is a good pick because you have to have pass rushers in this division. You got Justin Herbert, who can move, is an elite quarterback in every sense of the word. And then, even Russell Wilson. Like, Russell Wilson's not fleet of foot anymore, but he can still move outside the pocket. And I think this pick really emphasizes what Kansas City's trying to do, get better on the front line, because that's where typically they have succeeded and they have a good secondary. So I really like this pick.
Lisa, final thoughts here. Kansas City going defense with their pick.
Smart. I think it's a great pick. I think they'll find a wide receiver out there. There's going to be a lot of movement. There's also these second and third rounds to go, but I think this was smart to shore this up.
Kev, feeling the same?
Yeah, pretty much feeling the same. If they're not going to, go wide receiver, defensive end is probably the pick to make. And Ed Rouse pretty much hit the nail on the head going with the McFoley cheat pop, taking the guy from Kansas State.
Right, Kansas City, final pick in their home state here with the draft there. Pittsburgh's got the first pick in round 2. Do you think Joey Porter gets taken there, Austin? Do they finally make the pick?
I'm a big Steelers fan. They have the tendency to kind of go after family members and guys that kind of have ties to the Steelers in one way or another. So that pick would not shock me at all. That's how tomorrow starts.
It would be pretty interesting to see where they go with all of that. For one last time here, everybody, we got a big day tomorrow as well, covering round 2, 3 of the NFL draft here on the Bettor Sports Network, Bettor Sports Network app. Follow on the BettorCast, Fantasy Alarm social channels as well. Remember, join us on the Bettor Sports Network app for the complete BettorCast experience. You can play our live draft question, game, and answer with the fans. You got to download the free Bettor Sports Network app right now in your Apple and Google Play stores. So, guys, it's been a great night with everybody being there. Thank you all for joining us in the second half. Thank you, everybody who's out there watching for the round 1 coverage of the NFL draft here on the Bettor Sports Network. We'll be back tomorrow. Good luck, everybody, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.